Chapter 926. After knowing that Archmagus Alistair had left, Sue-E immediately went to find Teacher Carmilla. "Grandfather, did Archmagus Alistair agree?" Sue-E asked with a face of expectation. "How could it be that easy?" Teacher Carmilla rolled her eyes at him. "He is a Archmagus and his every move is watched. How could he just do whatever he wants?" "So it's still not possible?" Sue-Ye's face was filled with disappointment. "It's not that it's impossible." Teacher Carmilla shook her head. "Although Alistair didn't say it explicitly, from what I can see, it shouldn't be a problem for him to participate in this kind of research. However, if you want him to help you with something else, it's basically impossible. Anyway, you can't rely on 50,000 gold coins a year to buy him over from the Mala Empire." Sue couldn't help laughing. "Grandfather, aren't you looking down on me too much? If I could buy a Archmagus with 50,000 gold coins a year, then I would buy as many as I could. But you're only giving me 10,000 gold coins a year." Teacher Carmilla rolled her eyes. Sue looked at Teacher Carmilla and laughed. "Grandfather, you're another matter. You have a share in the entire company. As long as you like it, you can take as much as you want. However, you did remind me of something. The 10,000 gold coins a year that I gave you hasn't changed in many years. This is my negligence. You're a Archmagus now and it's not right for you to take that little salary. How about this? How about I raise your salary to 50,000 gold coins a year? What do you think?" Teacher Carmilla was stunned and quickly waved her hand. "I was just joking. Why are you giving me so much money? I have everything in the company right now, so money is useless. You might as well use the money for something else. This money can be considered an advertisement, so don't refuse it," Sue said with a smile. "Advertisement? I say, Sue, don't think too much about it. Although Alistair might agree to participate in the research, it's impossible for you to hire him to the Chamber of Commerce. You should give up on that idea," Instructor Carmilla said sternly. "I didn't really expect to hire Archmage Alistair, nor did I think about hiring other Archmages, but I can send a signal to the other mages on the continent. As long as you're willing to work for us, new flyer, we'll be able to pay you appropriately. The higher the rank, the higher the reward. Also, with the example of Archmagus Alistair, I found that this new method of cooperation is very feasible." "What cooperation model?" "Grandfather, you should know that our company has always cooperated with great magician Eisenkel, right?" "Eisenkel?" Archmagus Camilla snorted with a look of disdain. "That fellow took so many gold coins and resources from our company, but he only managed to research some useless things. I advise you to stop cooperating with him as soon as possible. Let's not talk about why he didn't produce any results, but this method of using our company's funding and inviting other mages to join in the research is very good. For example, as long as Archmagus Alistair agrees, there will be another Archmagus participating in the research on energy efficiency, so it will take a lot less time. Don't you think so?" Mentor Carmilla was silent for a bit before giving a soft sigh and nodding. "That's right. If there were more people helping, it would be much better than me doing the research alone. But Sue, this will create a very serious problem. In theory, these research results should belong to our new flyer, but if Alistair takes them out and gives them to the Mala Empire or someone else, how can you stop him?" Sue shook his head with a bitter smile. "For now, I don't have a way." "Then if you still want to cooperate with them, wouldn't that be giving away the things we worked so hard on?" Mentor Carmilla glared as she shouted. "No, Grandfather, you can't just look at the possible disadvantages. You also have to look at the benefits," Sue said with a serious expression. "If we just rely on New Flyer, a lot of research will be slowed down due to a lack of manpower. The energy efficiency you are researching is one of them. Although cooperating with other mages will risk the results being leaked, we need these results to appear right now. Do you think that just based on the practical application of these research results, Who on the continent can compare to our new flyer? Mentor Carmilla was silent. After thinking for a while, she nodded. All right, I admit that you're right. But Sue, have you considered that after these results are leaked, it will help other countries, especially large empires like the Kanla Empire and the Mala Empire, to quickly grasp the magic machine industry? Having the other countries of the continent join the magic machine industry is my goal, Sue said with a faint smile. Of course, you don't need to worry that they will surpass our new flyer. This is because it isn't important to grasp one or two technologies. What's important is the entire industrial system. Without the support of a complete industrial system, just one or two technologies won't affect anything. Mentor Carmilla looked at Sue with knit brows. You're really that confident? Of course. Sue revealed a confident smile. If you don't believe me, the Sac Kingdom will give you a very good example. January 3792 of the continent, the Sac Kingdom's military magic machine exhibition was held in the largest city in the southeast of the Sac Kingdom, Orama City. After 2 months of preparation, there were over 100,000 people participating in this exhibition. There were several thousand people who were invited or took the initiative to participate. Almost all the countries on the signs had sent representatives. The exhibition lasted for half a month before it came to an end. According to the official data of the Sac Kingdom, in this exhibition, the Sac Kingdom had sold 13,000 magic cannons for a total of over 6 million gold coins. Other than that, they had also received orders for the military magic machines that the Sac Kingdom had developed, which amounted to over 7 million gold coins. For a small country like the Sac Kingdom, this could be considered a very successful product exhibition. So in the Sac Kingdom's official announcement, they gave high praise to this exhibition. They said that through this exhibition, the Sac Kingdom had shown everyone that the Sac Kingdom had made a major breakthrough in the field of military magic machines. It also made it so that New Flyer was no longer the only military magic machine manufacturer, breaking New Flyer's monopoly. The Sac Kingdom's announcement directly mentioned the Frestec Chamber of Commerce. Moreover, these military magic machines were here for the Frestec Chamber of Commerce, so after the exhibition, everyone's eyes fell onto the Frestec Chamber of Commerce. According to a normal situation, New Flyer should have given a positive response or even directly fought back. But the fact was, New Flyer didn't react at all. Whether it was the Shinfei Magic Machine Weekly, that was published by New Flyer, or the Lampuri Weekly, that was the closest to New Flyer and was considered the leading newspaper in the Lampari Kingdom, they didn't publish any comments from New Flyer on the Sac Kingdom's magic machine exhibition. At the same time, in the other newspapers, there wasn't a single response from New Flyer on this matter. It was like this matter had never happened to New Flyer at all. The Frestec Chamber of Commerce's strange attitude attracted the suspicions of countless people. Some people thought that the Frestec Chamber of Commerce wasn't willing to respond to this matter, and some people thought that the Frestec Chamber of Commerce felt threatened by the Sac Kingdom, so they weren't willing or didn't dare respond. In some newspapers, there were even arguments like, New Flyer's monopoly is threatened and they are lacking confidence. However, no matter what these newspapers reported, New Flyer didn't respond at all. Everything was carried out according to the plan from before. As for the New Flyer's manager in the far north of the Mala Empire, Hogan, he didn't have time to care about the chaotic rumors in the southwest countries. There were countless things in front of him that had kept him busy for several months, so he didn't even have time to rest. The New Flyer's first fleet had already returned to the Principality of Constantine, and Hogan's task was to prepare for the magic machine industrial base before the ice thawed and the harbor was unsealed. In this preparation work, the most important thing was the problem of manpower. Half a month ago, Hogan had received a letter from the company's headquarters. In the letter, Sir Chairman had personally replied to the problem he had raised before, saying that he could accept Baron Franklin's suggestion and recruit other race workers from the northern Mala Empire. In order to show support for Hogan, there were 5 different Beastmen workers sent by Sir Chairman from the new flyer that came with this letter. When negotiating with other races, it was much more convenient to have the other side's people by their side. After receiving Sir Chairman's personal letter and the 5 Beastmen workers, Hogan had spent half a month preparing before officially visiting the largest Beastmen tribe in the northern Mala Empire, the Wolf tribe. Chapter 927. Due to various reasons, humans didn't have an accurate count of the number of other races remaining in the signs. But from a common point of view, they agreed that the Beastmen had the most people among the other races. And among the Beastmen, the tribe with the most people was the Werewolf tribe. When New Flyer communicated with the various Beastmen tribes in the Black Rice Wasteland, they confirmed this point. Among the more than 200 large and small Beastmen tribes in the Black Rice Wasteland, there were close to 20 werewolf tribes with a total of over 30,000 people. They occupied close to 30% of the Beastmen tribes in the Black Rice Wasteland. And among the Beastmen tribes entrenched in the northern part of the Mala Empire, it was said that the werewolf tribe occupied 40% of the Beastmen tribes. Among them, the largest werewolf tribe, Wolf tribe, had over 50,000 people. With such a large number and the powerful fighting strength of the werewolf tribe, the Wolf tribe became a powerful force that couldn't be ignored in the northern part of the Mala Empire. According to Baron Franklin's private information to Hogg, although the northern part of the Black Rice Wasteland was under the control of the Mala Empire in name, the Mala Empire didn't have much control over it. Simply put, the situation here was similar to the Black Rice Wasteland. The Beastmen were the masters here. Of course, the reason for this situation was because the northern tundra was the same as the Black Rice Wasteland. It was a place with an abnormally harsh environment. The Lampari Kingdom wasn't willing to invest so much manpower and resources to drive away the Beastmen tribes just to occupy the Black Rice Wasteland. Similarly, the Mala Empire wasn't willing to invest so much manpower and resources to occupy this useless tundra. But now that New Flyer had taken a fancy to this place and planned to turn it into a magic industrial base and a cargo transfer base, they had no choice but to deal with the Beastmen tribes that actually controlled this place. The mighty convoy led by Hogan was stopped by a group of werewolves when they were about 500 meters away from the werewolf tribe. "Human, what are you doing here?" the leading werewolf asked in the common language of the continent. Hogan sized up this werewolf with great interest. He discovered that this werewolf's attire was clearly much neater than the other werewolves around him. There were even a few pieces of bright armor on his chest and crotch area as protection. Compared to his werewolf companions who didn't even have complete clothes, his conditions were without a doubt much better. Adding in his fluent human language, it could be seen that his position was much higher than the other werewolves. "Hello, we are merchants from the south. We came to visit your tribe this time to do some business with you," Hogan said with a smile. "Business?" The werewolf looked at Hogan to look at Hogan to look at Hogan's eyes. Because what followed behind Hogan wasn't a traditional human horse carriage, but rather a strange large transport magic car that he had never seen before. This was the first time he had seen such a strange human caravan. "Yes." Hogan gave a slight nod before raising his hands to clap. 6 New Flyer subordinates came over with 3 boxes and opened them in front of the werewolves. The boxes weren't filled with New Flyer's representative magic machines, but rather one box was filled with white rice, one box was filled with thick cotton clothes, and the last box was filled with iron pots, plastic wash basins, nails, and other daily necessities. "Look, we've brought a large amount of food, clothing, as well as some ironware that you urgently need. I think this should interest you, right?" Hogan asked with a smile as he looked at the group of werewolves opposite him, whose eyes were shining brightly. These werewolves stared at the things in the boxes for a while, and the leading werewolf couldn't help licking his lip. It could be seen that he was very moved. But after a while, the leading werewolf suddenly looked up and revealed a fierce expression at Hogan as he said in a sharp voice, "Human. Graham." Hogan slightly knit his brows. "I'm here to do business with you, not scram." The werewolf loudly interrupted Hogan's words and even raised a flattened iron rod in his right hand and made a chopping motion towards Hogan, full of threat. Hogan helplessly shook his head. "All right, since you're not willing, then I'll have to look for other tribes." With that, Hogan waved his hand behind him, and the huge convoy changed direction, bypassing the wolf-werewolf tribe that occupied a large area in front of them, and headed toward the tundra further west. "Lord Baron, did the Malar Empire have any records of human merchants successfully trading with the beastmen?" Hogan turned back to look at the wolf tribe and asked Baron Franklin. "There were, but it was rare. In comparison, there were many records of being robbed by the beastmen." Baron Franklin gave Hogan a deep smile. Hogan smiled and took out a magic communicator from his chest. "Captain Orston, what's the situation now?" "There's no movement for now. But we will keep watch, so be careful of the other directions." "Okay." Seeing Hogan put away the magic communicator, Baron Franklin couldn't help looking up. Seeing the black clouds floating in the sky, Baron Franklin grinned with a strange expression. Should it be said that the new flyer was rich, or was it rich in resources? It was just a small operation, and they had specially sent out a magic airship. They simply didn't give others a way out. If the large transport magic car went at full speed, the caravan would be able to travel several hundred kilometers into the tundra before it became dark. However, Hogan purposely controlled his speed. By the time the sky was completely dark, he had only arrived at a barren land less than 50 kilometers away from the wolf tribe. There was still some time before spring, so the temperature in the northern tundra was very low. The caravan was camping in this place without any shelter, so the conditions were very bad. But before setting off, Hogan had already made all the preparations. After deciding on the camp, the new flyer's staff took some large metal frames from the large transport magic car and quickly built a metal house. Then they covered it with thick leather and installed several magic air conditioners, as well as a blanket on the floor. They turned on the magic air conditioner and with a warm breeze, the entire room became warm. It was like it was a completely different world from the cold tundra outside. Several portable metal folding tables were set up in the room, and each table had a magic stove on it. There was a large pot on top of it and the meat was being cooked. After a while, a strong aroma of meat filled the room, making one's body and mind feel incomparably comfortable. Baron Franklin took a deep breath before slowly letting it out. He felt the exhaustion from the journey disappear, and he couldn't help giving a satisfied sigh. "Manager Hogan, when you told me before that we would be camping here, I really was scared. The nights here are so cold that it surpasses your imagination. I thought that since you came from the south, you wouldn't understand the cruelty here, so you had this crazy idea. But now it seems." "How is it?" Hogan asked with a smile. Baron Franklin looked around before giving a satisfied nod. "This is simply a miracle. To be able to make such a warm place in the wasteland, it really has surpassed my expectations. Not to mention being able to enjoy such a delicious dinner here, it can be considered a pleasant trip and not the hard journey that I expected. Lord Baron, this is the comfortable trip package that our company is promoting. It is specially made for nobles like you who like to go out and play. Look, with this set of facilities, you can enjoy a comfortable life no matter where you are, and you don't need to worry about the difficulties of the journey. After eating, you can also take a comfortable hot bath in the bathroom on the side, relieving you of the hard work of the day." Hogan said with a smile. "Is that so? That really makes one feel happy." Baron Franklin laughed. He took out a bottle of chilled wine from the small magic refrigerator beside him, and after taking a sip, he couldn't help giving another satisfied sigh. In such a cold day outside, being able to enjoy cold wine in a warm room that shouldn't be enjoyed in this kind of weather was simply a great enjoyment. Of course, the Frestec Chamber of Commerce's caravan didn't come here just to sell this comfortable travel package. After dinner, Baron Franklin returned to his room to rest, while Hogan stared outside and waited patiently. The night gradually deepened, and the camp gradually fell into silence. The entire wasteland was filled with a deathly silence, as if the entire world had quieted down. However, when Hogan felt a bit sleepy, he suddenly felt a slight vibration from his chest. Hogan reached into his chest and took out the vibrating magic communicator. "Captain Austin, is there a situation?" "Yes. Those werewolves have already left the tribe and are currently charging towards you." "All right, we've already made our preparations, let them come over." "Captain Austin, please keep watching them. If there are any strange movements, please inform me." "No problem." After turning off the magic communicator, Hogan opened the door and walked out. Being hit by the cold wind outside, Hogan shivered and instantly felt much more awake. "Manager, is it time?" A human guard wearing the uniform of the new flyer guards came over. Hogan waved his hand. "Send down the order. Prepare to meet the enemy at any time." Chapter 928. Whoosh! A flashing red fireball with a layer of light green on the outside drew a bright trajectory in the night sky and landed on the tundra about a kilometer in front of the camp. Boom! The moment the fireball landed, it immediately let out a fierce explosion and a bright light shone in the sky. Along with the light and the sound of explosions, there were also the faint howls of wolves. If one were to look closely, they would be able to see that within the flames in the distance, there were countless figures flying up at the same time before exploding in all directions. These werewolves set up such a dense formation, it saved us quite a bit of effort. Hogan put down the binoculars in his hand and nodded with satisfaction. Baron Franklin on the side looked up at the glowing magic cannonballs in the sky with a complicated look. Then he turned to look at the Frestec Chamber of Commerce guards operating the military magic machines outside the camp, not saying a thing. The operation this time had been planned before they set off, so he knew very well that the werewolves of the wolf tribe would attack the caravan tonight. Because this was the warning he had given to Hogan in the first place. The first reaction of the beastmen living in the tundra when they met a human caravan wasn't to interact or do business, but to rob. When he saw the new flyers' caravan bring a large amount of necessities, Baron Franklin was certain that they wouldn't easily let go of such a fat piece of meat that was sent to their doorstep. The reason the werewolf chased them away was to find a good time to rob them. Hogan had asked Baron Franklin why they didn't pretend to do business with them and invite them into the tribe since they were like a piece of meat to the beastmen. Wouldn't it be easier to rob them then? Baron Franklin's answer was very simple. First, the werewolves didn't have the intelligence to do so. Second, even if they had the intelligence, they didn't have the gut. If a human caravan was ambushed in the wilderness of the tundra, the Malar Empire couldn't do anything even if they wanted to. This was because the tundra was originally under the control of the beastmen. Without enough support, the Malar Empire wouldn't use so much manpower and resources to deal with this matter. Moreover, the Malar Empire had already warned all human caravans not to rashly enter the beastmen's territory because it was the same as sending sheep to the tiger's den. Now that their caravan had courted death and barged in, the Malar Empire wouldn't do anything without enough support. If the werewolves invited them into the tribe to rob them, it would be equal to giving the Marlow Empire a reason they couldn't avoid. If a human caravan disappeared after entering a beastmen tribe and a noble was among them, they couldn't be fooled. The beastmen weren't all fools. Even if the tundra was under the control of the beastmen, they wouldn't do something that would anger the Malar Empire and cause trouble for themselves. So now, ambushing in the wilderness at night was the best choice. However, the werewolves of the wolf tribe would never have thought that they would kick an iron plate this time, and that this was a trap that was specially set for them. Manager Hogan, the military magic machines your company sold to the Empire's military might not be this powerful. Baron Franklin stared at the battlefield where the werewolves were being slaughtered and suddenly asked. Hogan turned his head to look and replied with a smile. The newest military magic machines are naturally given priority to the company's guards, there's no doubt about that. Then these are the most advanced and powerful military magic machines that your Frestec Chamber of Commerce has right now? Baron Franklin asked. This time, Hogan only smiled and didn't say anything. Seeing the smile on his face, Baron Franklin immediately understood. What he saw definitely wasn't the most powerful military magic machines the Frestec Chamber of Commerce had, but what he saw in front of him was already enough to shock him. The tundra of the Mala Empire had always been under the control of the Beastmen. This fact had always made many people in the Mala Empire unhappy. After all, such a large area of the Empire wasn't under their control. It really didn't make sense. However, the reason why the Marlow Empire didn't take back this piece of land from the Beastmen, other than the fact that this piece of land didn't have much value, there was another important reason. It was because the price they had to pay to take back this piece of land was too large. Beastmen were naturally much stronger than humans. Adding on the fact that these Beastmen lived in the tundra of the north, they were even more ferocious due to the harsh environment. Although the total number of orcs in the northern tundra was about 500,000, more than half of these 500,000 orcs could immediately become powerful orc warriors. According to the estimates of the Empire, if they wanted to completely defeat these beastmen, the Empire would have to mobilize at least 300,000 soldiers. This was a very difficult operation for the Empire's military to bear. Apart from the war with the Kanla Empire, the Malar Empire had never mobilized such a large army. So after some consideration, the Malar Empire could only allow this piece of land to remain under the control of the Beastmen. Now that Baron Franklin had personally witnessed the powerful military magic machines of the Frestec Chamber of Commerce, with less than 300 Frestec Chamber of Commerce guards, they had easily crushed the wolf tribe's wolfmen that attacked at night. He couldn't help feeling emotional. If the Empire's military could be fully equipped with such powerful military magic machines, wouldn't they be able to easily chase these beastmen away and take back the tundra of the north? Naturally, Baron Franklin wasn't a member of the military, so he only thought about it for a moment before suppressing it. After the battle continued for a while, the magic communicator in Hogan's left hand suddenly flashed with a red light. Hogan quickly picked it up. Captain Austin, what's the situation? Manager Hogan, the werewolves have already started retreating. Should we pursue them? No need. We don't have enough people, so let's not pursue them. Let them escape. Captain Austin, I'll have to trouble you to continue being vigilant. No problem. After hanging up, Hogan stretched and smiled at Baron Franklin. All right, Lord Baron, everything is fine now. We can finally have a good night's sleep. Baron Franklin looked at the dark wasteland in the distance and thought that even with the ferocity of the werewolves, they were forced to retreat after 10 minutes of fighting. It could be seen how much damage they had suffered. Even the werewolves could only choose to escape in the face of such an attack. What if it was the Empire's army? ####. The next morning, the caravan set off again. However, they didn't continue into the depths of the tundra of the north. Instead, they returned to the wolf tribe. This time, the caravan wasn't stopped outside the tribe. Instead, they were directly invited into the tribe. They also successfully met with the chief of the wolf tribe. After the 5 beastmen sent by Sue from the Black Rice Wasteland and Hogan's detailed explanation, the wolf tribe finally let down their guard against the humans and agreed to cooperate with New Flyer. In the end, both sides signed an agreement. The wolf tribe would first provide 1,000-strong werewolves as employees to New Flyer's Stratholme Magic Industrial Base. In return, New Flyer would pay these 1,000 werewolves a salary of at least 5 gold coins a month. They would also send a batch of daily necessities to the wolf tribe every month. At the same time, the wolf tribe would also help New Flyer get in touch with the other beastmen tribes in the tundra of the north and strive for more cooperation. For the members of the wolf tribe, this was undoubtedly a very novel experience. Because before this, the human merchants were synonymous with swindlers in their eyes. But this time, not only did the human merchants not use their large amounts of high-quality daily necessities to ask for the precious items they had painstakingly obtained, they even took the initiative to provide them. What they needed was just a few young men in their prime. What surprised the werewolves the most was that the human merchants actually said that they would pay the hired werewolves a salary. Moreover, it was 5 gold coins a month. This made the wolf tribe's werewolves feel incomparably astonished. This was because the valiant force displayed by the human merchants that night made them unable to even think of resisting. According to normal inferences, these human merchants had the ability to conquer their entire tribe and turn all the werewolves in the tribe into slaves and work for them for free. This was the fixed relationship between the humans and beastmen for thousands of years and had never changed. But now, this group of human merchants actually said that they would pay them a salary. This was simply ridiculous. However, regardless of whether the werewolves believed it or not, they didn't have the ability to resist. Secondly, the 5 beastmen who claimed to be from the Black Rice Wasteland described the attitude of the New Flyer towards the beastmen in the southwest corner of the continent. This made them somewhat believe that the New Flyer was indeed sincere. So in the end, they obediently signed this agreement. And with the wolf tribe, the number 1 beastmen tribe in the tundra of the north as an example, Hogan's following actions in the tundra of the north became incomparably smooth. In just 3 months, Hogan represented the New Flyer to sign employment agreements with 23 beastmen tribes in the tundra of the north, deciding on a total of 10,000 beastmen to be hired. So the most troublesome problem of manpower had been solved. At this time, it was spring and countless large transport magic cars filled with large amounts of goods were coming from the south. The Stratholme Magic Machine Industry Base was finally prepared and they were entering the construction phase. Chapter 929. When the Stratholme Magic Machine Industrial Base in the far north of the continent was wildly being built, the 3 Candla Empire Navy ports in the far south weren't idle. After obtaining another 5 guard ships from the Frestec Chamber of Commerce, adding in the 3 guard ships from before, the Candra Empire's navy finally had a new fleet of magic guard ship. In the many trainings and drills in the past half a year, this new fleet had shown everyone a might that far surpassed the Candla Empire's traditional warship. It made the Candla Empire's navy reach a consensus that the future development of the navy would be to completely change to this new magic guard ship. In the past, the traditional method of relying on a large number of wooden ships to oppress the opponent, constantly shooting rockets at each other, or even directly boarding the ships to engage in hand-to-hand combat, or at most using a small catapult to throw 2 stones at the enemy, had been completely replaced by a new type of combat that used ultra-long-range attacks and could end the battle without even seeing the enemy's face. If they wanted to move across the endless seas in the future, the Candla Empire's navy had to quickly change. However, there was an important problem that prevented the Candla Empire's navy from making this change. This problem was very simple and direct: it was money. The Empire's budget for the army had been cut again and again, with the Navy's budget being cut even more than the Army's. The money the Empire's Navy used to buy 3 magic guard ships from the New Flyer was taken out by the Navy's finance department. They also owed a portion to the New Flyer because of this, while also taking out some conditions like opening the military ports to the New Flyer's guard ships in exchange. Although the Empire's Navy obtained quite a bit from cooperating with the New Flyer, as well as the increase in sea transport from fighting pirates, After buying those 5 magic guard ships from the New Flyer, they had spent all the money they had worked hard to save over the past 2 years. So even if the Empire's navy had reached a consensus to change all their ships to the new magic guard ships, when they thought of the high price of 2 million gold coins per magic guard ship, they could only helplessly express their helplessness. In order to achieve this goal, and with the Emperor's private instructions, the Canla Empire's navy had deepened their relationship with the New Flyer. With the new Chief of Staff Count Russell's help, the New Flyer and the Canla Empire's navy had reached an agreement 2 months ago. They would open the 3 deep water ports to the south of the Canla Empire that were controlled by the Canla Empire's navy. To be specific, these 3 ports that only belonged to the Canla Empire's navy were now open to all ships. Although the ships entering the ports only needed to pay a certain protection fee to the Canla Empire's navy, this fee wasn't high. The largest ship only needed to pay 30 gold coins, which was something most sea transport merchants could afford. Moreover, after paying 30 gold coins, not only would they receive the protection of the Canla Empire's navy in these 3 ports, if they met any danger on the southern seas, they could ask the Canla Empire's navy for help. In short, for most sea transport merchants, this protection fee was worth paying. Of course, if they met any danger on the southern seas and could ask the Canla Empire's navy for help, the key was still the New Flyer. Each ship that paid 30 gold coins would receive a magic communication device from the New Flyer. With this magic communication device, as long as they were in the range of the New Flyer's magic communication network, they could use the magic communication device to contact other people in the same range of the magic communication network. In the southern seas of the Canla Empire, you could send a distress signal through the magic communication device at any time. Then this distress signal would immediately be sent to the Canla Empire's navy, and the Canla Empire's navy would send ships to rescue you. If the Empire's navy couldn't immediately come to rescue you, the ships that needed help could ask the nearest New Flyer's bases on the islands of the Endless Seas for help. Because the transmission range of each magic signal tower was limited to 5 kilometers, the Kandra Empire's navy suggested to the merchant ships that they shouldn't go 5 kilometers away from the island with the magic signal tower, otherwise the rescue signal wouldn't be able to be sent out. So after the Canla Empire's navy announced the opening of these 3 military ports as transport ports, the number of ships that came to the Canla Empire increased again, reaching several dozen times more than before. But if one looked down from the sky, they would find that although these ships were sailing on the endless seas, they were taking the same route. When all the ships sailed on the endless seas, they would always stay close to the New Flyer's base and wouldn't go too far. The most important reason was that this route was covered by the New Flyer's magic communication network, which allowed them to have strong instant communication conditions. If they met any danger, they could immediately ask for help, and they could immediately communicate with each other if there was any information. For these sea merchants who might not see a single person for 10 days to half a month on the boundless endless sea, this was a huge change that could turn heaven and earth upside down. Other than this, since this route was around the Frestec Chamber of Commerce's island base, it was clear that the Frestec Chamber of Commerce had already investigated it. There wouldn't be any hidden dangers on this route that they hadn't discovered, so it would be easier for them to travel. Then there was another thing that the Canla Empire's navy and New Flyer had published in the Endless Seas Route Guide. It was that the New Flyer had set up deep water ports for ships every 500 kilometers on these bases. The cargo ships could stop at these ports at any time to replenish and rest. For these merchant ships that had been floating on the endless seas all year round and could only rely on the supplies they had prepared to sail for several weeks or even several months, this was a great convenience. Moreover, the New Flyer would also provide some suggested ship maintenance and other logistical facilities at these ports, allowing these merchant ships to have a more reliable guarantee when sailing at sea. In addition, because they could obtain supplies at any time, The space used to store supplies could also be used to store more goods, making the value of this voyage much higher than before. Although the charges on these bases of the new flyer were much more expensive than on land, it was undoubtedly many times better than before when they couldn't replenish and rest midway and could encounter danger at any time. Moreover, they could now enjoy the protection of the new flyer's fleet and the Kandla Empire's navy fleet on the sea from the Principality of Constantine to the southern part of the Kandla Empire, greatly increasing their safety. Because of the above reasons, when the new flyer and the Kandla Empire's navy made a joint announcement, countless ships immediately sailed into the endless seas and began to shuttle back and forth on the route planned by the new flyer. Countless goods of all kinds were loaded onto merchant ships at the various ports in the Principality of Constantine and transported to the Kandla Empire through this route. These goods weren't just magical machines, but also a large amount of ordinary daily necessities, including food, clothing, plastic products, and even some pots and pans. When the merchant ships arrived at the southern ports of the Kandla Empire, a portion of these goods were sold locally and in the nearby regions, while the rest entered the Empire's hinterland through the Kandla Empire's navy and the new flyer's cargo transfer station near the ports. To the commoners of the Kandla Empire, any goods from the Principality of Constantine were extremely welcome. Think about it, a piece of clothing with a beautiful appearance, meticulous stitching, and only slightly different from the clothes made by the master tailors of the Kandla Empire was sold for a mere few dozen silver coins, or at most a little more than a gold coin. This was simply a gift. As for the other aspects, although most of the Kandla Empire's citizens didn't recognize plastic, the things that were made of plastic, like the plastic wash basins, were light and easy to use. They were much more convenient than iron wash basins, and their price was only a tenth of the price of normal iron wash basins. Moreover, the surface of the plastic wash basin was incomparably smooth, and it felt super good to the touch. It was much better than the bumpy iron wash basins made by blacksmiths. Moreover, iron wash basins were afraid of rusting, but plastic wash basins weren't. If one really didn't want to use plastic wash basins, and felt that metal wash basins were more reassuring, then there was no problem. This was because there were all kinds of wash basins made of various alloys for one to choose from. They would never rust, and were similarly light. It was just that they were slightly more expensive, but only by a few silver coins. Countless goods from the Principality of Constantine flooded in. Among them, there were goods that the commoners of the Kandla Empire wanted, but there were also many that they didn't expect. In short, they were all cheap and easy to use. In an instant, it had a huge impact on the lives of the commoners of the Kandla Empire. In a mere 2 to 3 months, the goods from the Principality of Constantine had left an extremely deep impression on the commoners of the Kandla Empire. The only exception was the southern province. Chapter 9:30. Duke Windsor stared at the two in front of him with a dark look on his face. What did you say? The merchants are all running? Why are they running? Where are they running to? What do they want to do? The two subordinates swallowed a mouthful of saliva and carefully looked at Duke Windsor before hesitantly replying, Lord Duke, the reason why the merchants are running, I'm afraid it's related to you. Related to me? Duke Windsor knit his brows and said in a sharp voice, What does this mean? Could it be that I chase them away? The two officials in charge of the finances of the Kandla Empire's southern province revealed helpless bitter smiles at the same time. Recently, the merchants of the southern province had all left the southern province, moving their companies to other parts of the empire. If one looked for the reason, it really was because of the Lord Duke in front of them. The reason for this was actually very simple, it was because of the Lord Duke's order. He didn't allow anything related to the new flyer to enter the southern province. After the emperor changed his attitude towards the new flyer in the second half of last year under the advice of the Minister of Finance Hasdrai, there were countless magic machines from the Principality of Constantine, the Lampari Kingdom, and the southwest countries that came from the Shinfei Chamber of Commerce into the Kandla Empire. Then the Kandla Empire's navy reached an agreement with the new flyer under the emperor's tacit consent. After the two sides opened a sea trade route, there were large amounts of products from the Principality of Constantine that came from the southern coast of the empire. These products didn't just include the magic machines from the new flyer and the other magic machine companies, it also included the magic machine products that were influenced by the new flyer. Because these products were much cheaper compared to the products from the Kandla Empire, they were much more popular in the empire. For merchants with a keen sense of smell, the business opportunity contained in this was self-evident. So the Frestec Chamber of Commerce didn't need to spend that much effort. The merchants of the Kandra Empire were like cats that had smelled blood, rushing to the southern harbor and the border between the southwest and the Norton Duchy. Their goal was to steal some goods from the Stantine Duchy as soon as possible and sell them for a good price. With the influence of this business wave, the ban Duke Windsor had made before was very conspicuous. This ban did not only ban new flyers' products, but also all products related to Shinfei's businesses. This all included almost all the goods from the Principality of Constantine and the Norton Duchy that entered the Kandla Empire. Because of the products that were popular in the Kandla Empire, there wasn't a single one that wasn't related to the new flyer. Even the only thing that the Principality of Constantine could import from the Kandla Empire was the fruit produced in the Principality of Constantine, but now it was influenced by the industrialization of the Shinfei Chamber of Commerce. For example, the canned fruits that were in high demand were products of the new magic machine industrial system promoted by the new flyer. Actually, Duke Windsor wasn't the only one in the Kandla Empire who was against importing large amounts of products from other countries because they felt that this would greatly affect the Kandla Empire. But the others were only against the new flyer. The reason was that the new flyer supported the Kingdom of Ruhr and was considered an enemy of the Kandla Empire, so the empire couldn't cooperate with them. Duke Windsor was against everything related to the new flyer. There were too many things that he had designed. Under Duke Windsor's high-pressure policy, any products related to the new flyer couldn't enter the southern province. This made the southern province merchants who smelled the business opportunity very depressed. To make these merchants ignore this business opportunity, it was no different from making a cat that smelled fish not move. It was impossible. But how could normal merchants dare go against Duke Windsor, who could cover the sky with one hand in the southern province? So in the end, these merchants directly moved their focus out of the southern province, moving to other places in the empire that didn't oppose cooperating with the new flyer. Actually, to be honest, these merchants were only paying more attention to the new flyer. It didn't mean that they completely gave up on their business in the southern province. But now that this situation was reflected, it seemed like the merchants were all leaving the southern province. For Duke Windsor, the most direct reflection was in the financial statistic. After entering April, the southern province did the usual financial statistics for the first quarter. The results showed that compared to last year, the southern province's grain yield was the same and there was no change in the financial surplus from the grain. But in terms of business taxes, there was a clear decrease compared to last year, falling by 13%. This wasn't considered much for Duke Windsor because he was a typical Signs noble. What he cared about the most was grain. There was no problem with the grain, so he didn't feel that there was a problem. As for business, it was fine as long as there was no problem. But when the first quarter financial report was submitted to the Empire's finance department, the southern province was criticized by the finance department. According to the explanation of the Empire's finance department, the southern province's first quarter revenue was second to last among the 9 provinces of the Empire. It was only a bit better than the northeast province of the Kandra Empire that was known for being poor. Compared to before, the southern province's revenue was at least in the middle of the empire, so there was no doubt that this was a clear decrease. Moreover, the southeastern province that was close to the southern province and the Toria province that was close to the coast had a large increase in the first quarter of this year. The Toria province's revenue even broke 38 million gold coins, far surpassing the southern province's measly 17 million gold coins. This created a strong contrast that made the southern province's drop from last year even more glaring. Duke Windsor, who had suffered quite a bit of disdain from the finance department, was very angry about this. After returning to the Governor Manor, he immediately ordered an investigation. The two finance officers in charge of the investigation gave the answer of large amounts of merchants leaving the southern province, which of course made him very dissatisfied. Lord Duke. Actually, this subordinate feels that, compared to the business tax problem, I feel that we should pay more attention to the grain problem. One of the finance officers hesitated a bit before giving this suggestion. What? Duke Windsor glared at Duke Windsor. Could it be that you want to tell me that there are problems with the grain production of our southern province? Let me tell you, the important spring harvest is coming, and if there are problems with this, not to mention you all, even I will be in trouble. The two finance officers could only give bitter smiles. The finance officer who had gathered the courage to speak looked at his colleague, signaling for him to speak as well. The other finance official had no choice but to bite the bullet and say, "Your Grace, it's not that there's a problem in this area. It's just that we've discovered that as long as you change your mind, our spring harvest will go much smoother. Perhaps we'll even have the hope of greatly increasing the grain production during the autumn harvest." Duke Windsor was a bit surprised. "I just need to change my mind and the grain yield will increase? Are you joking?" "No, how could we dare joke with you?" The financial officer took out a document from his chest and handed it to Duke Windsor. "Lord Duke, this is a report on the agricultural industry in the southern province that Baron Domingo asked us to give you. Please take a look." "Domingo? Why didn't he give it to me himself?" Duke Windsor doubtfully looked at the two of them. "This." The two finance officers looked at each other with bitter smiles. "Baron Domingo said that he was afraid that you would be angry with this report, so he didn't dare come himself, so he asked the two of us to do it." Duke Windsor looked at the two of them. Duke Windsor looked at Duke Windsor. "Then you're not afraid of me being angry?" The two finance officers gave bitter smiles again. "We can't escape anyway." Seeing the bitter expressions on their faces, Duke Windsor gave a cold snort. He took the report and looked it over before his face sunk. "These bullshit ideas again. No wonder he didn't dare come see me." Duke Windsor angrily threw the report to the ground and pointed at the two of them as he cursed. "Tell Domingo for me that if he insists on importing the Frestec Chamber of Commerce's agricultural magic machines, he can't appear in front of me again. The same goes for the two of you. Don't think that I don't know what you're thinking. Are you the same as those merchants who only have gold coins, trying to force me to cooperate with that damn new flyer? Isn't that right?" The two finance officers lowered their heads, not daring to look at Duke Windsor at all. They knew that the Lord Duke was truly angry this time. Duke Windsor pointed at the two of them and scolded them before waving his arm. Scram! The two finance officers acted like they had been pardoned and quickly gave a bow before leaving. After the two left, there was only Duke Windsor left in the room. He was panting for a bit before gradually calming down. After seriously looking at the report on the ground for a while, Duke Windsor hesitated a bit before picking it up and carefully looking it over again. This time, he was much more serious and focused than before. It took him half an hour to finish reading the report. After reading the last page, he was silent for a while before suddenly giving a sigh, as his face seemed to have aged by several years. Could this be the change of the times? Duke Windsor gave another sigh before coming back to the table and pulling a rope on the table. A middle-aged man who looked like a butler silently appeared in the room. "Old master, do you have any orders?" Different from the others, this middle-aged man called Duke Windsor "Old Master" in a very simple manner. Duke Windsor waved his hand. "Go and prepare, I'm going out for a walk." The middle-aged man looked up at Duke Windsor with a bit of surprise in his eyes, but he didn't ask anything. He lowered his head and silently left. Chapter 931. Duke Windsor left the Duke's manor with a simple carriage, only bringing his housekeeper. He changed into a set of normal cotton clothes and entered an old horse carriage from the back door of the Duke's manor, slowly heading into Canberra City. The scene on the road wasn't that different from normal, but if one looked carefully, they would find that the streets were more deserted. In the past, there were a lot fewer people hawking their wares on the street. Naturally, there were also fewer people who were willing to stop and watch on the street. Looking at both sides of the street, many of the shops that were originally densely packed were now closed. Among them, there were even a few shops that seemed to have left in a hurry. They didn't even close their doors tightly. One could see that the inside was empty, with only a few homeless people lying inside. They were using this place as their temporary residence. Seeing this, Duke Windsor couldn't help slightly knitting his brows. "Rickon, why do you think this is? Even if other places have business opportunities because of that damn new flyer, that doesn't mean that our southern province doesn't have money to earn. Why would these merchants directly close their shops and leave?" The middle-aged man who looked like a butler was the Rickon that Duke Windsor mentioned. He was different from the others who were respectful and even trembling when facing Duke Windsor. This person was very calm in front of Duke Windsor. Although he was still respectful, he didn't look like he was in awe. Hearing Duke Windsor's question, Rickon was silent for a bit before raising the whip in his hand to have the horse carriage turn. Duke Windsor had grown up with Rickon and knew that he had always been like this, so he didn't care if he didn't answer. But seeing Rickon turn, Duke Windsor knew that he had an answer in his heart, so he fell silent. He watched the situation on both sides of the street while sitting in the horse carriage slowly heading out of the city. The horse carriage brought Duke Windsor and Rickon out of Canberra City's west gate. After going another 2 to 3 kilometers to the west, they saw a large village with over 100 families in front of them. It was late spring and the southern province was close to the south of the continent, so the wheat fields on both sides of the road were already golden. This should be the most important time before the harvest, so the farmers should take care of the ripening wheat field. But when Duke Windsor looked over, he only saw a few scattered farmers, not looking busy at all. Duke Windsor couldn't help knitting his brows again. These lazy farmers are still slacking off at such a crucial time. Don't they know that the spring harvest is coming? Rickon turned to look at Duke Windsor before shaking his head. "Old master, it isn't that they're lazy, rather they didn't have anyone else." Duke Windsor was surprised. "What do you mean?" Rickon pointed at the fields in the distance. "Look, there are only some old people in the fields. I don't see any young people." Duke Windsor calmed himself and seriously looked around the field. When he found that this was indeed the case, he couldn't help being more surprised. "Why is that? What about the young people in the village? Could it be that all of them went to slack off? Or did something happen? Rickon, what do you know?" Rickon shook his head and did not answer. Instead, he drove the carriage to the side of a field and jumped down. In this field, there was an old farmer who looked to be at least 60 years old, who was bending over to inspect the situation in the field. After hearing the sound, he raised his head and saw Rickon jumping down from the carriage and walking over. "Brother, why are you here alone? Where's your family? What about his son and daughter-in-law? Why aren't they here?" The old farmer looked at Rickon. Although he could see that the other side's identity was different from his tone and appearance were very amiable, so he let down his guard and said with a smile, They all went out to work. They left this old man and this old woman to take care of the field." "Work? Rickon's face revealed a surprised expression. Rickon revealed a surprised look. Where are they working? They don't even farm? They said that they went to a city called something Neil. They said it was Shinfei. After spitting out these two words, there was a look of fear that appeared on the old farmer's face. He gave two coughs and swallowed the rest of his words. Rickon acted like he didn't see the old farmer's actions at all as he continued to ask, "You're talking about the new flyer, right? That whatever Neil City, it should be Serene City, right? That place is in the Toria province, it's a bit far from here." Hearing the words, Frestec Chamber of Commerce, that were taboo in the southern province, the old farmer's expression relaxed a bit. He shook his head with a smile and said, "It doesn't matter if it's a bit further, it's fine as long as we can earn money. If we go there, we can at least earn 5 gold coins a month. If we go a little more, we can even earn 10 gold coins. It's much better than farming at home. If it wasn't for the fact that the old woman and I are in poor health and unwilling to leave here, I'm afraid that we would go to work with our 2 sons." "Oh? You can earn 10 gold coins a month? That's quite a lot." Rickon raised his head and looked around before asking, "I see that the people in the fields are all old people like you. Are the other families in the village like your family, the young people running out to work?" "Yes, if they go out to work, they can earn several gold coins or even 10 gold coins a month. In a year, they can earn more than 100 gold coins. If they stay here to farm, it's already good enough that they can fill their stomachs after paying the rent. Not to mention gold coins, they won't even have a few silver coins. If I let you choose, how would you choose?" the old farmer asked. Rickon grunted and nodded. "If it was me, I would choose the same. But is it really reliable to go to such a faraway place to work? What if there's an accident?" "TSK, what accident can there be?" The old farmer curled his lips. "Anyway, our lives are cheap. If there's a chance to earn real gold coins, of course we have to grab it. Also, those factories over there seem to be Shinfei merchants." Speaking up to here, the old farmer's expression paused. He looked around and lowered his voice. "It seems to be related to New Flyer. You should know about New Flyer, right? They are a rich merchant association, they wouldn't lie to people like us." Rickon felt a bit strange. "You seem to know a lot about New Flyer? How do you know about this merchant association?" The old farmer's reaction was even more strange. He looked at Rickon with a strange expression and then looked around. This time, he forgot to lower his voice and directly asked, "Isn't your question too strange? Why can't I know about New Flyer? New Flyer's products are so useful and cheap. If I don't know about this, then I'm too ignorant." "Where did you find out that New Flyer's products are so useful and cheap? Didn't the Frestec Chamber of Commerce and the other companies come before and they brought many good things? Other than that, before the Lord Governor put down the ban, there were many merchants who brought many things in, so there are still quite a few in our village. Compared to those unscrupulous merchants in Canberra, New Flyer's products are very useful." Speaking up to here, the old farmer seemed to have thought of something. He hesitated for a moment before asking, "Actually, when I heard that New Flyer came, they wanted to invest in some factories in Canberra, right? You said that if the governor didn't issue that ban and let those factories be built, then my 2 sons wouldn't have to go to such a faraway place like Toria province to work. So, you don't agree with the governor's ban?" "Yes, this ban doesn't have any benefits at all." The old farmer's eyes suddenly widened. He looked at Rickon vigilantly and quickly waved his hand. "No, no, no, I didn't say anything. Don't make wild guesses. Whatever ban the governor issues is his business. It has nothing to do with us." Rickon nodded and didn't continue to ask. He turned to the old farmer and talked about the upcoming spring harvest. The old farmer was also a little worried about the upcoming spring harvest. In the past, during the spring harvest, the family had to work hard for a month before they could barely finish harvesting the 10 mu of land under their name. Now that his 2 sons and daughter-in-law, as well as his half-grown grandson, had all left, it was likely that he and his wife, these 2 old men and old women, would only be able to harvest 2 mu of grain at most. But it doesn't matter. Now that our sons are doing well, us 2 old men can just collect some food for ourselves. We don't have to be so tired. What about the rent? Rickon asked. Rent? At worst, we'll just buy some grain. Anyway, our eldest son said in a letter last time that the ship from the Principality of Constantine brought back a lot of cheap grain. With their current salary, they can buy several £100 a month, which is enough to pay the rent. Rickon was speechless. The old farmer gave another sigh before continuing, I've heard from the relatives that came last time that the Frestec Chamber of Commerce has some agricultural magic machine. It's said that it doesn't even take half an hour to harvest a mu of land with that thing. It would be good if the Lord Governor didn't have this ban and brought in some agricultural magic machines. We wouldn't have to worry about what to do with the fields. Rickon and the old farmer looked at the green wheat fields with a bit of gold. After being silent for a bit, he waved goodbye to the old farmer and returned to the horse carriage. Duke Windsor had been watching Rickon and the old farmer talk through the curtains the entire time. Because he wasn't far away, he could hear everything they said. After Rickon came back, Duke Windsor looked at the wide fields in front of him for a bit before putting down the curtains and falling silent. After a while, Duke Windsor suddenly gave a sigh. Rickon, I'll give you something. Grandfather, please give your orders. I've heard that there is a Cantona Chamber of Commerce in the Lampari Kingdom that specializes in harvesting crop. Go and contact them. Rickon looked at Duke Windsor before nodding in response. Duke Windsor opened the curtains to look at the old farmer in the field for a while before giving another sigh, signaling for Rickon to start the horse carriage. Chapter 932. Compared to the southern province that had lost all its popularity because of Duke Windsor's ban and even had a lifeless appearance, the other provinces of the Canla Empire were quickly swept into the magic machine revolution with the large amounts of magic machine products brought in by the Shinfei Chamber of Commerce. When people found that for the same product, if it was made by traditional craftsmen, not only would it take longer, the cost would be higher, the quality would be unstable, and the performance wouldn't be that good. But if it was made by the magic machine companies through the production magic machines, it was a completely different matter. Not only would it take less time to make each product, it would also allow them to make large amounts of products in a short period of time. Not only would the cost be lower, the quality of the products would be very stable. It could even be said that each product was made from the same mold. Comparing performance, the products made with the new production magic machines and the new materials provided by the Shinfei Chamber of Commerce far surpassed the previous product. Take the shovel, which was the most commonly seen and often used by ordinary people, as an example. If one wanted to make a shovel before, it would take a blacksmith several days to make it. But even the most skilled blacksmith couldn't guarantee a 100% success rate if they focused all their efforts on it. Moreover, the shovels made like this were affected by the blacksmith's iron casting process. If there was a deviation in the smelting process, the shovel would be very brittle and would break after a few hits, or it would be very soft and wouldn't be able to function as a shovel. As for the shovels that came from the Principality of Constantine, they were made by a magic machine company that specialized in making shovels, and other farming tools. Almost every shovel was the same, and they were all made from the high-strength steel alloy provided by the new flyer. Whether it was hardness or toughness, it far surpassed the shovels made by traditional blacksmiths. It's said that after a famous sword saint from the Toria province obtained this shovel, he found that this shovel was even sharper and harder than the sword he had been using for over 20 years. It was made by a famous blacksmith in the Canla Empire. After trying out the shovel, he actually felt that the shovel was better than his sword. He simply asked the other blacksmiths to transform the shovel into the shape of a sword, replacing the sword that he had been using for more than 20 years. Although this was only a legend, one could already catch a glimpse of it from this legend. If it was said that the various magic machines that New Flyer brought into the Canla Empire through Ambassador Hakkinen, as well as the magic car company that Baron Belil opened, had only affected the lives of a small part of the Canla Empire's nobles. Then, with the cooperation between the New Flyer and the Canla Empire's navy, the large amount of goods from the Principality of Constantine flowing into the Canla Empire had already had a large impact on the lives of countless citizens of the Canla Empire. Many commoners only realized that there were such cheap and beautiful clothes in this world when they saw these products. There were also such cheap and useful tools. Previously, these commoners thought that only those high and mighty big shots could possibly possess these things. Now, they had suddenly become items that any ordinary person could touch. For these commoners, buying cheap and beautiful clothes from the Principality of Constantine didn't just satisfy their yearning for beautiful clothes, it also gave them the illusion that they had become nobles. So the people of the Canla Empire had a strong desire for these goods from the Principality of Constantine. The New Flyer's first batch of goods that arrived at the Canla Empire's southern harbor was a fleet of 7 large transport magic ships. They were filled with goods from the Principality of Constantine and the Lampari Kingdom, including the New Flyer and the other 17 companies. Just the total weight alone was over 30,000 tons. However, such a large amount of goods was divided up by the merchants of the Canla Empire's southern provinces on the first day they arrived at the harbor. Even after all the goods were sold, there were several hundred Canla merchants from different companies that came over. After learning that the first batch of goods were sold, these merchants didn't hesitate to place orders with the New Flyer. So the second batch of goods from the New Flyer didn't even leave the Principality of Constantine's harbor before all the goods on board were sold. If the large transport magic ships set off from the 3 harbors of the Principality of Constantine, it would take at least 13 days to reach the Canla Empire's harbor. So in this half a year, the New Flyer's transport fleet didn't stop moving back and forth between the 2 places. According to the reports from the transport fleet, in the past 7 months, the New Flyer's transport fleet had sent 113 ships to the Canla Empire's harbor, transporting a terrifying 589,000 tons of goods. As for the total value of the goods, just the various goods from the New Flyer had a total value of over 16 million gold coins. If the goods from the other companies were added in, the total value would be at least over 30 million gold coins. However, even with such a large amount of goods, after entering the Canla Empire, it was like a drop of water falling into a giant sponge, instantly being absorbed. And this enormous sponge still seemed to have an endless demand for all kinds of goods. Sui could only helplessly sigh at this phenomenon. After all, the Canla Empire was the empire with the longest history, the largest land area, and the largest population in the Signs. Its domestic market far surpassed the combined market of the Southwest Signs countries. This was only the first year that the New Flyer had opened the Canla Empire's domestic market, and because of various reasons, it hadn't opened up enough, but it had already obtained such shocking and terrifying profits. If the Canla Empire could fully open up the market in the future, the New Flyer's profits would be even more terrifying. In order to transport more goods to the Canla Empire as soon as possible, the New Flyer shipyard had increased their horsepower. They even stopped making guard ships and focused on making large transport magic ships. But a large transport magic ship took twice as long as a guard ship. Even if they increased their horsepower, with the current production capacity of the New Flyer, they could only make 3 ships a year. There were many powerful companies that wanted to order large transport magic ships from the New Flyer, but they were limited by the production capacity of the New Flyer, so they couldn't satisfy them. In this situation, the New Flyer could wait, but the other companies couldn't. Because of the delicate relationship between the New Flyer and the Kanla Empire, even if the Kanla Empire's emperor's attitude towards the New Flyer had changed, it was still very hard for the New Flyer to invest in the Kanla Empire. But this wasn't a hindrance to the other companies. So with the ideas of the other companies and Su-yi taking the initiative to pull strings, from the beginning of this year to the beginning of summer, there were 37 large and small companies from the Lampari Kingdom and the Principality of Constantine that had entered the Kanla Empire, investing in factories in various parts of the Kanla Empire. Some of these factories were concentrated in the Tudor province that was close to the southern naval port of the Kanla Empire, and some were concentrated near the Kanla Empire's capital, Wimbledon City. There was a very small, but important difference between these two factories. The magic machine factories near Wimbledon City were led by the Lampari Kingdom in name. Because of the cooperation agreement between the Lampari Kingdom and the Kanla Empire, they came to invest, so they could be considered a regular army. As for the factories of the various companies in the Tudor province, most of them invested in the Kanla Empire under the company's name, so they didn't have any official background. The result of this difference was that the factories of the companies near Wimbledon City were mainly related to magic machines, and most of them were from the Lampari Kingdom. The large companies of the Lampari Kingdom already had high-level household magic machines, as well as some agricultural magic machines. The factories of the companies in the Tudor province were of different sizes. The largest one was the cement factory, concrete workshop, mineral refinery, and magic car transport center that was set up by the Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce. It took up over 20,000 hectares of land. As for the smallest one, it was a small canned fruit factory. It gathered the canned fruit in the Tudor province, and then sold it to various parts of the Kanla Empire. With so many factories being set up in the Kanla Empire, other than the core staff that came from the Lampari Kingdom and the Principality of Constantine, most of the normal workers could only be recruited from the Kanla Empire. So as the factories of these companies were set up, there were two giant magic machine production bases in the north and south of the Kanla Empire. When the New Flyer had appeared in Banta City, it had turned Banta City into a magic machine production base. It had attracted countless people from other cities in the Lampari Kingdom to come to the New Flyer for jobs with attractive wages. The same situation was currently playing out in the Kanla Empire. But compared to the phenomenon caused by the New Flyer in Banta City, the two magic machine production bases in the Kanla Empire were now more than 10 times bigger, so they needed to recruit more than 10 times more people. So these two magic machine production bases were like two giant magnets, attracting people from all over the Kanla Empire. But whether it was the magic machine production base near Wimbledon City or the magic machine production base in the Tudor province, there was no trace of the New Flyer. It made these companies feel like they were missing something. But because of various reasons, the New Flyer that couldn't officially enter the Kanla Empire, what was it doing at this time? Chapter 933. Of course, New Flyer wasn't idle. Opening the sea trade route between the Principality of Constantine and the Kanla Empire, although it was very important to New Flyer's future plans, this was far from the only thing New Flyer needed to do. It could even be said that this matter wasn't even in the top 3 in Su-yi's mind. Because even if they were both developing the markets of the two empires, comparing them, the Malur Empire that didn't have any conflicts with New Flyer and didn't have any worries about introducing magic machines into their country was much better in this aspect. While the Kanla Empire was still hesitating about buying agricultural magic machines from New Flyer, the Malur Empire had already requested large amounts of agricultural magic machines from New Flyer for the 5th time last month. Just in the first half of this year, the Malur Empire's Ministry of Agriculture had ordered 85,000 agricultural magic machines for a total of over 5,700,000 gold coins. At the same time, there were large amounts of orders from the citizens of the Mala Empire, which were the large nobles. Although the total amount couldn't compare to the orders from the Mala Empire's Ministry of Agriculture, it was still increasing at a shocking speed. Before last year's fall harvest, including the Marquis of Southgard, the Mala Empire's nobles had only ordered 2,000 agricultural magic machines. After the spring harvest in the first half of this year, this number had suddenly increased to over 20,000, breaking the total amount of 2 million gold coins. Moreover, as the Mala Empire's acceptance of New Flyer's agricultural magic machines became higher, more and more nobles began ordering various kinds of agricultural magic machines. According to the estimates of the New Flyer's market department, by the end of this year, this number would surpass 50,000, with a total amount of close to 4 million gold coins. If it was like this, just by selling agricultural magic machines to the Mala Empire, New Flyer's sales would be over 10 million gold coins. Even if New Flyer took the initiative to pay for the transportation to the Mala Empire, increasing the cost, with New Flyer's high profits, their net income would still be over 4 million gold coins. Other than the agricultural magic machines, the various household magic machines were quickly becoming popular in the Mala Empire. Seeing that it was about to enter summer, New Flyer had already received over 7,000 orders for magic air conditioners and magic refrigerators from the Mala Empire, with a total of over 200,000 gold coins. This number was very small compared to the several million or even over 1,000 gold coins for agricultural magic machines, but this was only the orders from the Mala Empire's nobles that New Flyer was familiar with, including the Marquis of Southgard. During this time, the New Flyer's office in the Mala Empire had received various messages. Once it was summer, the orders would definitely explode. Adding in the other household magic machines, the minimum amount of orders from the Mala Empire would be over 2 million gold coins. Calculating it like this, New Flyer had only started developing the Mala Empire market in the second half of last year. In less than 2 years, this market had already brought over 5 million gold coins to New Flyer. And this was only a small part of the Mala Empire market. If it was developed like the Lampari Kingdom, this large market would bring a shocking amount of income to New Flyer. The reason why New Flyer made different plans for these two empires was naturally because these two empires were the two most important countries in the signs. But for Sui, who was determined to spread the magic machine industry all over the signs, this was obviously far from enough. Therefore, apart from the series of development plans for the two empires, Sui placed more importance on how to develop the other countries on the continent at the same time. A few years ago, because the Nozdormu Business Union Kingdom took the initiative to come to New Flyer opened a channel in the southern waters of the Endless Ocean to connect the Nozdormu Business Union Kingdom and the other countries in the southeast corner of the continent. Now that a few years had passed, New Flyer had already established a solid foundation in the Nozdormu Business Union Kingdom. The magic machine industry brought by the Shinfei Chamber of Commerce had also had a clear impact on the Nozdormu Business Union Kingdom and the surrounding countries. Last year, Narvel had led the New Flyer's first transport fleet out of the Principality of Constantine, heading north. His main goal was to find a sea channel to the Mala Empire's northern harbor, but he had made contact with several small countries along the way and had successfully attracted the interest of these small countries in magic machines. According to the plan, next week, Narvel would lead the first transport fleet to the Mala Empire's Stratholme harbor. This time, other than transporting a batch of goods to Stratholme harbor, Narvel's most important task was to strengthen communication with the small countries along the way. If everything went smoothly, Sui was very willing to build several small magic machine industry bases in these small countries. Other than this sea channel, the Sac Kingdom had already reached a private agreement with the New Flyer. They would open a land channel to the New Flyer on the Sac Kingdom's western coast, allowing the New Flyer to pass through the Black Rice Wasteland to the Sac Kingdom's western coast and then smoothly reach the Antilla Kingdom to the north of the Sac Kingdom. With this sea route and this land channel, it would allow the New Flyer to easily contact the countries in the northwest corner of the signs. Like this, based on the map, the only countries that the New Flyer couldn't easily contact were the countries to the east and northeast of the signs. This was indeed a difficult problem for Sui, because based on the map there was no doubt that it was more convenient to enter these countries through land and it was closer. But this meant passing through the Kanla Empire, and with the relationship between the New Flyer and the Kanla Empire, this was clearly not a realistic choice. If they couldn't do it on land, they could only consider the sea route. But if they took the sea route, it was equal to going around the entire signs, which would increase the time and other costs. Moreover, if they were too far away, it would be a large hindrance to the New Flyer. While it was hard to solve the problem of passing through the Kanla Empire for now, for the sake of the long term, Sui proposed a solution after careful consideration. It was to build a base for the New Flyer in the corresponding place, which was equivalent to sending a clone there to take care of matters that were too far away from the New Flight Commerce main base. To put it in a more conventional way, it was to open a branch base. However, it wasn't easy to open a subbase. First, you had to ensure that the subbase had enough ability to protect itself. You also had to ensure that there was a smooth connection between the main base and the subbase. Only then would the subbase be able to successfully survive, develop, and fulfill its duties. But with the current strength of the New Flyer, it wasn't enough to support a branch base more than 5,000 kilometers away from the main base. So this involved something that Sui valued the most. In his opinion, it was the most basic thing to change the continent and the world. It was also something that had to be solved first. The name of this thing reflected this point because it was called infrastructure. In Sui's opinion, the real obstacle to the development of the continent and the problem that affected the industrialization process of the signs was that the infrastructure in the signs was ridiculously poor. Of course, this couldn't be blamed on the continent, because before Sui transmigrated, the continent was in a half-feudal and half-slave system like on Earth. Other than having magic, which was a civilization that was different from Earth, the other aspects were very backward, so naturally there wasn't any infrastructure. Now with Sui's many years of planning and the cooperation of the Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce, at least in terms of transportation, the Lampari Kingdom, the Principality of Constantine, the Kingdom of Ruhr, and the surrounding small countries had all been greatly improved. First was the roads. Just in the Lampari Kingdom, there were over 50,000 kilometers of roads this year. Not only were there roads connected to every city, there were even roads connected to every town. This caused a heaven-shaking change in the road situation. Next was the means of transportation. Regarding this, with the popularity of the New Flyer's magic sedans, in the southwest countries of the signs, they had already replaced the traditional horse carriages. Adding in the large amount of roads that were laid out, if one wanted to travel through these countries, it would take much longer to travel compared to before. At the same time, there was a large change in the comfort level. Because the transportation was more convenient, the people of these countries were more willing to leave their homes compared to before. It made the movement of people very common, and it made it easier for the Frestec Chamber of Commerce and the new magic machine industry companies that needed large amounts of people to recruit. With the development of these years, the countries in the southwest corner of the Signs continent had already formed magic industrial zones around their centers. Compared to the two new areas of the Kanla Empire, these magic industrial zones were much more complete and mature. According to Sui's plan, there would be magic industrial zones all over the continent in the future, spreading the influence of the magic industry across the continent. The key to this was other than transportation, there was another important factor, which was communication. Chapter 934. It would be a bit of an exaggeration to say that communication on the signs relied on roaring. But if only great magicians could use it with each other, the super high-end spatial magic that normal people couldn't use at all, the only method of communication on the signs continent, was basically shouting. Although letters could be sent to and fro on the signs, due to the inconvenience of transportation, the cost of sending letters was extremely high. To be specific, if one wanted to send a letter from the Principality of Constantine's new flight commerce main base to Anvil City, which was approximately 1,300 kilometers away, even if one didn't consider the fact that the letter might not reach its destination due to the distance between the two countries, the postage would still be as high as 13 gold coins. That's right, 1 gold coin per 100 kilometers, no more, no less. Such an expensive price wasn't something that most ordinary people could afford. As a result, most ordinary people on the signs didn't have any communication with the outside world. In addition, it was difficult for them to leave the place where they lived, so almost all of them would be born, grow up, and live in the same place for their entire lives before eventually dying of old age. They had never come into contact with the outside world and didn't understand it at all. Although the new flyer and the Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce had improved the transportation situation in a large area, allowing ordinary people who had never left their villages to have the opportunity to experience the outside world, communication was still a huge problem. Take the many workers under the new flyer, for example. They could only return home once a year, and there was no way for them to communicate with others at home. In Su Yi's opinion, this was an unbearable situation. Fortunately, Akali and her research team were becoming more and more thorough in their research on magic resonance technology. Finally, they relied on this technology to successfully build a relatively complete magic communication network. After 2 years of laying down the framework, the new flyer had successfully built a magic communication network in the Principality of Constantine that could cover all places in the Principality of Constantine. Now, as long as Su Yi was in the Principality of Constantine, he could use this magic communication network to contact anyone in the Principality of Constantine who also had a magic communication box. Moreover, the magic communication line from the Principality of Constantine to the Lampari Kingdom that was built by the new flyer and the Lampari Kingdom last year had been completed. Now Su Yi could even chat with Seoul, who was 1,300 kilometers away when he had nothing to do. Compared to when Su Yi wanted to contact Seoul, he could only write a letter to her and it would take at least 5 days to reach her. This method of communication was without a doubt much more convenient. Of course, this new method of communication had many flaws. From a personal point of view, compared to the mobile communication network on Earth that could connect countless cell phones at the same time, this magic communication network could only separate several magic communicators and have different conversations. As for the various services and conveniences of the mobile communication network on Earth, there was no need to even think about it. From a broader point of view, the biggest problem with this mobile communication network was that the cost was too high. In order to build a complete magic communication network in the Principality of Constantine, the new flyer had built a total of 700 magic signal towers. There were quite a few of them that were built in the mountains that were hard to reach, so the total cost was over 3 million gold coins. And this was only in the Principality of Constantine, that was less than a tenth the size of the Lampari Kingdom. If it was the Lampari Kingdom, it would cost over 10 times as much. Seoul had been moved before and wanted to complete this project, but when she learned from Su Yi that the cost was over 30 million gold coins, she immediately gave up on this idea. Su Yi was very helpless about this. Of course he hoped that the Lampari Kingdom, the Kingdom of Roer, and even the Sak Kingdom, the Fok Kingdom, the Kanla Empire, and the Malar Empire would have a complete magic communication network, which would solve the communication problem that troubled him the most. But thinking about it, this beautiful wish definitely couldn't be realized right now. For example, although the Lampari Kingdom had been driven by the magic machine industry in recent years and their annual revenue kept rising, according to the data that Seveni gave Sui last year, it had already surpassed 16 million gold coins. It far surpassed the previous revenue that couldn't be reached, but this still couldn't support Seveni's decision to spend a shocking 30 million gold coins on a magic communication network. Of course, from a fair point of view, Soul's worries weren't unreasonable because the magic communication network that New Flyer had set up was very limited. The most important problem was that because the magic signal was transmitted at a fixed frequency, it was hard for many people to use the magic communication network at the same time. This was also a problem that Sui was very dissatisfied with, but it was a good thing that Akali and her research team had made a breakthrough recently. They could make slight changes to the magic array inside each magic communicator, allowing different magic signals to be transmitted. But compared to the cell phones and mobile networks on Earth, this was still very inconvenient. So in summary, this magic communication network wasn't very cost-effective for Seveni. If even Seveni couldn't accept this, there was no need to count on the other countries. So even if New Flyer kept building magic signal towers, they were only building them in the area they controlled. They were just extending the magic communication network in the Principality of Constantine. A clear example was the sea route that New Flyer opened with the Kanla Empire Navy, connecting the Principality of Constantine to the southern ports of the Kanla Empire. On the surface, the merchant ships on this sea route could use this magic communication network to send out distress signals, but this magic communication network was firmly controlled by New Flyer, so it was completely New Flyer's private communication network. Suyi's next step was to continue building a magic communication network on the endless seas to the east, extending it all the way to the Nozdormu Business Union Kingdom before going north to the east coast of the Signs. Like this, New Flyer would be able to control the situation in the other bases in an ideal situation and respond at any time. With this foundation, the idea of opening bases in other places could be realized. Only this was without a doubt a large project. With a casual estimate, it would cost tens of millions of gold coins. Even though New Flyer's annual income was amazing, there was no way they could easily come up with such a huge investment. Therefore, after Sui made a summary of the various plans in his mind, he finally found that they were all focused on one key factor, and that was time. It took time to make breakthroughs in research, time to change the infrastructure, time to let everyone on this continent accept the new magic industry, and time to change their traditional views. In short, no matter what goal he wanted to achieve, it would take a lot of time. After figuring this out, Sui suddenly felt a lot more relaxed. Previously, he always felt as if there was a whip constantly whipping him from behind, forcing him to be tense all the time, thinking about all kinds of problems, hoping to achieve the goal he set as soon as possible. Now that he understood that it would take a lot of time as a foundation, Sui was no longer in a hurry. He decided to breathe a sigh of relief first. Bright sunlight sprinkled down from above, passing through the small gaps in the dense leaves, and falling on the ground, turning into bright spots of light. At this moment, Freya was jumping back and forth in the empty space in this small forest. She stepped on the spots of light here and there, occasionally letting out a few clear and cheerful laughter. After watching for a while, Sui stretched and sat up from the recliner. Seeing Freya's cheerful appearance, Sui only felt his whole body relax. In the past week, he gave himself a good vacation, staying at home every day to play with the children. Although it was still busy, it was a completely different feeling. After staying with the children for a long time, Sue-yi even felt lazy, and felt that it was a good choice to live peacefully like this. Hey Freya, come here. Sue-yi thought for a while and suddenly waved to Freya. Freya looked back at Sue-yi, and ran over with a string of bell-like laughter. She plunged into Sue-yi's arms and then pulled him out. Dad, get up and play with me. Sue-yi smiled and shook his head. Don't be in a hurry. Freya, I have a question to ask you now. You have to think carefully before you answer. Freya blinked, and her two bright little eyes turned, and said with a smile, Dad, Mom sent you to ask me, right? Sue-yi was startled, and then laughed. He reached out and scratched Freya's nose and asked, Yes, your mom sent me to ask you. But I am also very concerned about this question. Tell me, have you decided what you want to do in the future? Freya wrinkled her beautiful nose and replied with a snort, How would I know what I want to do in the future? Mom always asks me this, I have no way to answer, okay? Seeing the dissatisfaction on Freya's little face, Sue-yi couldn't help but laugh. Although Freya had just turned 7 this year, she was already very smart, and showed great talent in both magic and other aspects, so Steele had high expectations for her, and was also very strict with her. This made Freya somewhat resistant in front of Steele, and it was Sue-yi who came to ask these questions. Then tell me, what do you like to do? Sue-yi asked. I like a lot of things, like magic, like machinery, like history, like… Freya answered with her fingers one by one, looking very serious. However, Sue-yi had to stop her. Wait. Freya, listen, it is impossible for a person to be the best in all aspects, you have to choose. What I want to ask you now is, among all the things you like, which one do you like the most? Favorite? Freya wrinkled her little brows, thought for a while, and shook her head. I don't know. Dad, Mom made me learn a lot of things, and I liked everything, but Mom always forced me to learn according to what she said. I don't like this, can you help me tell Mom? Sue-yi smiled bitterly. This Freya was only 7 years old, and she was already so weird. What would happen when she grew up? Just as he was about to speak, Freya suddenly clapped her little hands and said excitedly, Dad, I know what I like to do the most. Sue-yi asked in surprise, What do you like to do the most? I like to be like you the most. Freya pointed her little finger at Sue-yi. When I grow up, I also want to be a president. Sue-yi blinked. Why? Because people will listen to my orders this way, Freya said confidently. Sue-yi weakly slapped his forehead. It looked like he needed to have a good talk with Steele about Freya's education. Judging from Freya's reaction, it was likely that she had suffered too much oppression during her education, causing her to have such strong thoughts of resistance. But after thinking about it, Sue-yi's eyes suddenly lit up, and he laughed, pulled Freya into his arms, and said to her slowly and seriously, Freya, listen well, being a president is not an easy thing. First you have to. On an ordinary afternoon in the early summer, the woman who would be called the most powerful woman in the signs for many years to come began her first lesson at the peak of her life. Chapter 935. G. The chirping of the cicadas kept entering Nielsen's ears, making him even more irritated. Hearing this fat fellow keep talking, Nielsen really wanted to splash the tea beside him in his face. This damned fatty! He kept repeating that the other company's household magic machines were also easy to use, their performance wasn't worse than new flyers, but the price was several times cheaper. No matter how one looked at it, it was much better than buying new flyers' household magic machines. Damn! If this damn fatty really thought this, he wouldn't have come to see me today. Nielsen cursed in his heart, but the smile on his face didn't change. Only his smile was a bit stiff right now, it didn't seem that natural. Of course, the Aoder Duchy's external affairs manager Viscount Wilbur didn't care about the expression on Nielsen's face at all. After talking about the disadvantages of the Xinfei brand household magic machines compared to the other brands, He finally stopped. He took a sip of tea and moistened his throat that was a bit dry from talking for so long. Nielsen immediately seized this chance and spoke again. Lord Viscount, I admit that the household magic machines produced by our company are indeed more expensive than other brands of household magic machines. But you said that the other brands aren't worse than our Xinfei brand household magic machines. I don't agree with this. Oh. Viscount Wilbur looked at Nielsen with narrowed eyes. Is there a difference between these things? Anyway, they all have the same function. This damn fatty who doesn't know anything. Nielsen couldn't help cursing in his heart again. Coo. Of course it's different. Lord Viscount, let's take the magic air conditioner that you're most interested in as an example. Our company's Xinfei brand magic air conditioner, at its highest power. Looking at the 2 lumps of fat on Viscount Wilbur's face, Nielsen quickly changed his words. At its highest power, it can lower the temperature of an entire room in less than 2 minutes. For example, here. Nielsen circled his left arm and compared the wall of the cottage, which was over 20 square meters in size, where they were drinking tea and having a rest. Look, the temperature in this room is almost the same as outside. It's unbearably hot. But if you install a Xinfei brand magic air conditioner, in less than 2 minutes, the entire room will be as cool as autumn. Then what part of the magic air conditioner is better than the other brands? Viscount Wilbur asked. The other brands of magic air conditioners find it hard to achieve the same effect. The cooling speed is very slow and it isn't stable. The most important thing is that the consumption of the other brands' magic air conditioners is much higher than our Xinfei brand magic air conditioners. Using the Xinfei brand magic air conditioner, the lowest consumption for an entire night was 1.2 degrees of magic, which was less than a standard high-concentration magic crystal. If he used the other brands of magic air conditioners, the power consumption would increase by several times. Just based on this, using our Xinfei brand magic air conditioner would save close to a gold coin a month. Viscount Wilbur curled his lips in disdain. Che, at most it's less than a gold coin a month. What is there to care about? Don't forget, your Xinfei brand magic air conditioner is several gold coins more expensive than the other brands. It's even over 10 gold coins. Just the money you get from buying it is enough to support your consumption for several months. This thing can only be used for a few months a year, so 10 gold coins is enough for it to last several years. This thing will definitely break in a few years, so what is there to care about? Nielsen was a bit surprised. He thought that this Viscount Wilbur wasn't that stupid, but he really didn't have the corresponding understanding, which was why he had such an unreasonable idea. This was different from when he sold the Xinfei brand household magic machines to the other countries. The countries that Nielsen worked in before were all in the southwest corner of the continent, being close to the Lampari kingdom. Naturally, they had a certain understanding of New Flyer, so Nielsen didn't need to waste his breath to explain all these things. Almost all the products that New Flyer produced were without a doubt the most popular products in the southwest corner of the continent, so no one doubted them at all. Now that Nielsen was 5,000 kilometers away from the Principality of Constantine, the Eoder Duchy that was in the far east of Signs, he had to take the initiative to sell it. Only then could he let people know the difference between the Xinfei brand household magic machines and the other brands. Thinking of this, Nielsen couldn't help cursing Sir Chairman in his heart. If it wasn't for the chairman insisting on bringing the other magic machine company's products to the eastern countries of the continent, New Flyer could have monopolized this region with its own products and he wouldn't have to put in so much effort to sell it. But this was the chairman's usual style of doing things. An old man like Nielsen was already familiar with it, so after complaining in his heart, he continued to introduce the advantages of the Xinfei brand household magic machines to Viscount Wilbur. However, Viscount Wilbur didn't seem to be moved. He let Nielsen talk for a long time, but he was still unmoved. Ha, Nielsen. Manager? I still feel that your new flyer's position is very strange. Viscount Wilbur paused before saying with a serious look, "How about this? As for whether our Aoder Duchy will import your Fresteck Chamber of Commerce's household magic machines, I can't decide this matter alone. So let me go back and discuss it before considering it. What do you think?" Nielsen's face couldn't help but sink. As a full-time employee of New Flyer, who had been doing sales for a long time, how could he not hear the perfunctory meaning in this sentence? From Viscount Wilbur's current performance, he probably already had a decision in his heart. However, why did he still dare to waste half a day's worth of saliva on her? She couldn't figure out. After thinking about it, Nielsen could only helplessly nod. He still smiled at Viscount Wilbur and reached out his hand. "Okay, Sir Viscount, I'll visit you in 2 days." Viscount Wilbur waved his hand and laughed at the sky. "Let's talk about it later, haha." Seeing Viscount Wilbur leave the quiet tavern, Nielsen couldn't help but sigh and shake his head. From Viscount Wilbur's reaction, his attempt to sell Shinfei brand household magic machines on a large scale through the Aoder Duchy's officials could be declared as a waste. Because he lost the support of the Aoder Duchy's officials, he could only slowly promote through the people and let the people of the Aoder Duchy gradually accept Shinfei brand household magic machines. If this region only had Shinfei brand household magic machines to choose from, then it would be very easy. But because of the president's policy, all kinds of different companies and brands of household magic machines were mixed in this region, including Shinfei brand. Everyone was working hard to obtain this new market. Although Nielsen had absolute confidence in the quality, performance, and other aspects of the Fresteck brand household magic machines, the people in this area weren't like the people in the southwest countries of the Signs continent who had already formed a consensus on this. So in reality, everyone was still on the same starting line. Even if New Flyer could obtain an advantage with its high quality and performance, it would take a lot of time and effort. Moreover, according to Nielsen's many years of experience, once a region was occupied by a brand, it would be very hard to change it. So, Sir Chairman is too kind. Why does he have to give the other magic machine companies such a good chance? Thinking of this, Nielsen couldn't help criticizing Sue E in his heart. When Nielsen was thinking about what to do next, the door to the tavern was suddenly pushed open and Nielsen's assistant Mendieta quickly came in. After looking left and right, Mendieta quickly walked to Nielsen's side and whispered in his ear, "I've just heard the news. The Longley Chamber of Commerce's Naden met with Viscount Wilbur yesterday and gave Viscount Wilbur a bribe of no less than 3,000 gold coins." Nielsen raised a brow and couldn't help giving a cold laugh. 3,000 gold coins. It's no wonder the Lord Viscount is this cold to us. Humph. Mendieta hesitated a bit before saying in a low voice, "Manager, do you think we should also send?" "Shut up." Nielsen cut Mendieta off without any politeness. "If Sir Chairman hears this, do you believe he won't immediately have you scram?" Mendieta trembled, but he was still a bit unwilling as he said, "But are we giving up on this place like this?" "Nonsense, of course we won't give up like this. But this isn't a reason to give money to that damn fatty. Since this fellow is willing to take the Longley Chamber of Commerce's money, if he has some integrity, he will definitely work for the Longley Chamber of Commerce. But if he goes back on his word, do you think I would dare give him money?" Mendieta thought about it and felt that it was very reasonable, so he fell silent. Nielsen also fell silent. He knit his brows and tapped his finger on the table while considering what to do next. Now that Viscount Aoder, who was in charge of external affairs in the Aoder Duchy, had taken the Longley Chamber of Commerce's money, he would definitely do his best to help the Longley Chamber of Commerce. This was very disadvantageous for the New Flyer. But this wasn't something that couldn't be changed. If it was necessary, Nielsen could ask the headquarters for help, which would easily defeat the Longley Chamber of Commerce and any other competitors. But 1, this would go against Sir Chairman's plan, and 2, it was equal to Nielsen admitting his failure, which was something he definitely couldn't accept. So what he had to do next was to start with the other aspects of the Aoder Duchy. Several figures flashed in Nielsen's mind before the door to the tavern was suddenly slammed open again. Nielsen and Mendieta looked at the door in a daze, but they found that Viscount Wilbur was shaking his fat body as he squeezed through the door, charging over as fast as he could. And Manager Nielsen, Viscount Wilbur was panting with a very anxious look on his face, like he had encountered something very urgent. What is it, Lord Viscount? Nielsen was a bit confused as he looked at Viscount Wilbur, who had come back. Manager Nielsen, regarding the matter just now, can we change places to talk? Nielsen and Mendieta were both stunned. Based on Viscount Wilbur's tone, could it be that there was a sudden change in this matter? But the problem was, where did this change come from? Chapter 936. The next day, a piece of news made the puzzled Nelson and Mendieta finally understand where this turning point came from. The content of this news was actually very simple. The Nozdormu Business Union Kingdom declared war on their northern neighbor, the Khaki Duchy. Then, they used only 3 days to wipe out most of the Khaki Duchy's army and directly captured Duke Khaki and his family. The Khaki Duchy was declared dead. This news could be said to have shocked everyone in the countries southeast of Signs. Although the Khaki Duchy was only a duchy in name, the power that the Khaki Duchy held wasn't inferior to a normal kingdom. Moreover, Duke Khaki Duchy had always been willing to spend money on maintaining his army. Therefore, the Khaki Duchy had always been known for their valiant fighting strength among the countries southeast of Signs. Other countries wouldn't easily provoke them. But now, the Nozdormu Business Union Kingdom had brazenly declared war on the Khaki Duchy. Moreover, they actually destroyed the Khaki Duchy in just 3 days. This was truly out of everyone's expectations. It had to be known that the Nozdormu Business Union Kingdom had only been established for less than 3 years. Although the 13 merchant guilds under the Nozdormu Business Union Kingdom had always been known for their strong economic strength, even the Nozdormu Business Union Kingdom appeared to be extremely wealthy. However, in everyone's understanding, having money and having power were two completely different things. No matter how rich the Nozdormu Business Union Kingdom was and how they had the guards of the 13 merchant guilds, it was still a far cry from establishing a qualified kingdom army. But this time, the Nozdormu Business Union Kingdom had only mobilized 5,000 guards from 5 merchant guilds and easily defeated the Khaki Duchy. They even made the Khaki Duchy become a kingdom in an extremely short period of time. This result shocked everyone in the southeast corner of Signs. Among them, the ones that were the most shocked and felt extremely uneasy were the neighboring countries of the Nozdormu Business Union Kingdom. The Aoder Duchy was one of them. Duke Aoder also wants to buy our merchant guild's military magic machines? Nelson reclined on his chair and glanced at Viscount Wilbur with a trace of ridicule in his smile. This fellow was all sorts of arrogant in front of him 2 days ago. Now, he was speaking so humbly. His face was even close to the table. It truly made one sigh. Yes. After the Duke heard that your merchant guild produces these military magic machines, he expressed his interest. The Duke feels that these military magic machines are very important to our Aoder Duchy, so he very much hopes to purchase a batch from your merchant guild. Manager Nielsen, please inform the headquarters of your Chamber of Commerce immediately. It would be best if they could ship these military magic machines to us in the next batch of transport fleet. Seeing Nelson's hesitant appearance, Viscount Wilbur clenched his teeth and continued to smile. Of course, the Duke said that as long as your merchant guild is willing to provide the military magic machines, we can discuss the price. Nelson looked at Viscount Wilbur's fawning appearance and couldn't help but want to tease him. He put on an awkward expression and said with a frown, "But, Lord Viscount, you also know that even if our merchant guild's transport fleet comes, they will first stop at the southern port of the Nozdormu Business Union Kingdom. These goods can't be hidden from the Nozdormu Business Union Kingdom." Viscount Wilbur's expression immediately changed. After thinking for a moment, he moved closer to Nielsen and lowered his voice. "Manager Nielsen, I'm very clear about the cooperative relationship between your Chamber of Commerce and the Nozdormu Business Union Kingdom. As long as your merchant guild doesn't want to, you can definitely not be discovered by the Nozdormu Business Union Kingdom. Am I right?" Nelson snorted. "Lord Viscount, it's not impossible to do this. But the Nozdormu Business Union Kingdom is one of our most important partners. What reason do we have to hide from this important partner and do this kind of thing?" Viscount Wilbur immediately became silent. He was very clear in his heart. Not to mention that the Nozdormu Business Union Kingdom had just destroyed the Khaki Duchy with a thunderous momentum, their reputation in the nearby countries had skyrocketed. Even if it was before, their Eoder Duchy couldn't be compared to the Nozdormu Business Union Kingdom. If they had to make a choice, the new flyer would choose the Nozdormu Business Union Kingdom and not their Eoder Duchy. "Of course." Nelson suddenly opened his mouth again and said unhurriedly, "If the Grand Duke can bring out enough sincerity, it's not like we won't consider it." Viscount Wilbur's eyes suddenly lit up. He thought for a bit and nodded. "Good. Manager Nelson, I think the Grand Duke will definitely want to meet you and discuss it personally. I just don't know if it's convenient for you?" "Convenient? Why wouldn't it be convenient?" Nelson said with a smile. "If the Grand Duke wants to see me, it's very convenient for me at any time." Viscount Wilbur was immediately overjoyed. "That's great. Manager Nelson, please come with me to see the Grand Duke right now. The Grand Duke will be very happy to know that you came to visit." Nelson laughed in his heart. Since he entered the Eoder Duchy, he had asked to see Grand Duke Eoder several times. However, he was repeatedly rejected. He only sent Viscount Wilbur, who wasn't particularly important in the Eoder Duchy, to deal with him. Now that the Eoder Duchy was aware of the crisis, Grand Duke Eoder immediately put down his status and took the initiative to see him. The gap between the former and the latter was too strong. Thinking of this, Nelson couldn't help but smile bitterly in his heart. He originally thought that with his own ability and the quality of the household magic machines produced by the Shinfei Chamber of Commerce were far superior to other brands of household magic machines. Even if he didn't rely on the power of the Chamber of Commerce, he could successfully promote them in the Eoder Duchy. However, he didn't expect that because of the sudden action of the Nozdormu Business Union Kingdom, he would passively enjoy the convenience brought by the Chamber of Commerce. Of course, this wasn't something to be hated. If he could spend less time and effort on Eoder Duchy, a small duchy that wasn't worthy of much attention, why wouldn't he do it? ##### The Nozdormu Business Union Kingdom attacking the Khaki Duchy wasn't a special case in the signs. Less than half a month after this matter happened, there was a war that attracted even more attention and had even more influence in the Western signs. The Sac Kingdom used the excuse of a normal conflict between the Northern Antilla Kingdom and declared war on the Antilla Kingdom. In the end, in just a week of fighting, the Sac Kingdom's Northern Polar Bear Regiment was like a hot knife through butter. They defeated the Antilla Kingdom's army in 7 battles and successfully invaded 500 kilometers into the Antilla Kingdom. In these 7 battles, the battle strength of the Sac Kingdom's Northern Polar Bear Regiment was very shocking. The Antilla Kingdom's army had always been considered quite good among the 10 countries of the continent. The Sac Kingdom had dared to invade the Lampari Kingdom for several hundred years, but they had never dared to provoke the Antilla Kingdom. However, this time, the Polar Bear Regiment had easily defeated the Antilla Kingdom's army, even making the Antilla Kingdom's army unable to resist at all. This was a very shocking thing. But this wasn't something that was hard to understand. Because according to the information from various sources and the Sac Kingdom's announcement, the Polar Bear Regiment had been equipped with large amounts of military magic machines. With the help of these military magic machines, the Polar Bear Regiment's battle strength had greatly increased, allowing them to easily crush the Antilla Kingdom's army. This information on one hand proved that the military magic machines could greatly increase the battle strength of an army, but on the other hand, it also proved another shocking piece of news. That was, the Sac Kingdom actually had the ability to mass-produce military magic machines. It was clear that New Flyer definitely wouldn't provide this many military magic machines to the Sac Kingdom. The Sac Kingdom had also announced that they had the ability to mass-produce military magic machines. With these two together, it meant that the Polar Bear Regiment's military magic machines were all produced by the Sac Kingdom. Based on what the Sac Kingdom announced to the public, this was indeed the truth. The Polar Bear Regiment was indeed equipped with large amounts of military magic machines produced by the Sac Kingdom, which was why they had such a strong battle strength. And all of this was unrelated to New Flyer. Once this news was confirmed, it wasn't an exaggeration to say that the entire continent was stirred. If it was said that when the Sac Kingdom announced that they had the ability to mass-produce military magic machines and even held a special exhibition, everyone was still doubtful of the Sac Kingdom, but after the Sac Kingdom declared war on the Antilla Kingdom, all these doubts disappeared. There was nothing more convincing than fact. The facts were that the Sac Kingdom didn't have the help of New Flyer at all. They had actually used their military magic machines to easily defeat the Antilla Kingdom. With such a strong fact in front of everyone, they had no choice but to believe it. So while the war between the Sac Kingdom and the Antilla Kingdom was in full swing, all the countries on the continent with the conditions began to move. Everyone's goal was very simple and clear. Since they couldn't obtain satisfactory military magic machines from New Flyer, why wouldn't they try the Sac Kingdom? However, when countless countries and people were about to move, preparing to enter the Sac Kingdom, there was a sudden piece of news that stopped them. The Lampari Kingdom had officially declared war on the Sac Kingdom. Chapter 937. If one looked at the several hundred years of history between the Lampari Kingdom and the Sac Kingdom, it wasn't strange for the Lampari Kingdom to declare war on the Sac Kingdom. This was because since the two countries were established, the Sac Kingdom had been invading the Lampari Kingdom for several hundred years. Even if they didn't defeat the Lampari Kingdom, the Lampari Kingdom had suffered a lot of humiliation because of this. Now that the Lampari Kingdom had developed their magic machine industry over the past few years, their financial situation had greatly improved and their national strength had greatly increased. Adding in the support of the New Flyer, their army was equipped with large amounts of military magic machines, so their battle strength had greatly increased. The Lampari Kingdom had won all their conflicts with the Sac Kingdom in the past few years, completely reversing the situation between the two countries. In this situation, the Lampari Kingdom declaring war on the Sac Kingdom to get justice for the humiliation of the past few hundred years was something that was very easy to understand. But what confused many people was that whether it was the Lampari Kingdom or the New Flyer who supported the Lampari Kingdom behind them, they had taken the initiative to reach out a hand to the Sac Kingdom, expressing their desire to cooperate. In the past 3 years, they had cooperated with the Sac Kingdom in many ways. According to the information from all sides, the Lampari Kingdom and the Sac Kingdom had a very happy cooperation, even deepening their cooperation. Since they had already established a good cooperative relationship, why did they suddenly turn hostile and refuse to recognize him? Not to mention that the Lampari Kingdom declaring war on the Sac Kingdom was very subtle. It was right when the Sac Kingdom had won the war against the Antilla Kingdom and when the Polar Bear Regiment had already invaded the Antilla Kingdom's territory. If one looked at it from a pure strategic point of view, this was indeed a very clever timing. This was because the Sac Kingdom had put most of their energy into the war against the Antilla Kingdom, so suddenly being declared war by the Lampari Kingdom was very difficult to deal with. But like this, it showed that the Lampari Kingdom was serious in declaring war. It wasn't as simple as just attacking the Sac Kingdom. The reason for this was a little thought-provoking. The Antilla Kingdom and the Lampari Kingdom were separated by the Sac Kingdom, so they didn't have much contact, so of course they weren't allies. The Lampari Kingdom declaring war on the Sac Kingdom this time clearly wasn't to support the Antilla Kingdom. But the Lampari Kingdom and the Sac Kingdom were clearly cooperating well. Even at the beginning of this year, Her Majesty Seveni announced to the world that the Lampari Kingdom and the Lampari Kingdom's cooperation was very good. She hoped that they could continue cooperating and work together to develop both sides. Now that half a year had passed, Her Majesty Seveni was going to go back on her words? No matter how one looked at it, the Lampari Kingdom suddenly declaring war on the Sac Kingdom was very strange. However, for the people outside the Lampari Kingdom and the Sac Kingdom, they didn't care about the reason. What they really cared about was the result of this war. Everyone knew that the Lampari Kingdom was where the new flyer started. Although the Lampari Kingdom's internal turmoil caused the new flyer to move their main base away from the Lampari Kingdom, the relationship between the new flyer and the Lampuri Kingdom had always been good. The Lampari Kingdom's current Queen Seveni had a good relationship with the new flyer's chairman Sui, so the new flyer supported the Lampari Kingdom in all aspects. Because of this, the Lampari Kingdom's army received large amounts of military magic machines from the new flyer. It could be said that other than the new flyer guards, they were the army with the most complete set of military magic machines on the continent. Everyone had seen the might of the military magic machines from the battles between the Kanla Empire and the Kingdom of Ruhr. Even the Kingdom of Ruhr's army with a small amount of military magic machines could easily defeat the Kanla Empire's army, so the Lampari Kingdom's army with the most complete set of military magic machines would be much stronger than the Kingdom of Ruhr's army. So before this, even if they hadn't fought before, everyone thought that the Lampari Kingdom's army should be very strong. But this time the Lampari Kingdom declared war on the Sac Kingdom, so everyone could see for themselves if the Lampari Kingdom's army with the most complete set of military magic machines was as strong as they imagined. Other than the Lampari Kingdom's side, the Sac Kingdom was also the focus of everyone's attention. The Sac Kingdom was the only power other than the new flyer that had announced that they could produce military magic machines. Moreover, in the battle against the Antilla Kingdom, they had shown that their military magic machines were very strong. So like this, the war between the Lampari Kingdom and the Sac Kingdom would turn into a war between two armies equipped with large amounts of military magic machines. This was the first time this had happened in the history of science, so naturally it attracted a lot of attention. Everyone wanted to know if the Lampari Kingdom's army equipped with the military magic machines made by the new flyer was stronger or if the Sac Kingdom's army equipped with their own military magic machines was stronger. For the other countries and powers on the continent, this was a very valuable demonstration of modern warfare. And this demonstration officially began on the 5th day after the Lampari Kingdom declared war on the Sac Kingdom. ###so. In the sky above them, there were countless arrows mixed with several dozen bright fireballs that filled the sky. Raising his head to look, he saw several bright flames in the dark sky. It seemed to be an extremely shocking sight. The captain of the 1st Squad of the Lampari Kingdom's Northern Army's 3rd Regiment's 6th Brigade's 3rd Mobile Squad, who was also the commander of the Armored Magic Vehicle Team, Captain Eiffel looked at the dense rain of arrows and the fireballs in the sky that seemed very terrifying. With a whistle, he came down and went back into the armored magic vehicle under him, while also closing the lid. The moment he came in, the armored magic vehicle driver Sakmarin beside him pressed a button on the control panel of the armored magic vehicle in front of him. A light blue light came from the bottom of the armored magic vehicle and quickly spread, instantly covering the entire armored magic vehicle. After that, the 5 people in the armored magic vehicle heard countless ding, ding, dang, dang sounds coming from above them, as well as the occasional hong, hong sound of explosions. It made them realize that they were in the middle of an intense battlefield. However, although these sounds were clear, they were very weak. It couldn't make people feel the excitement of being on the battlefield at all. Sitting in the back of the armored magic vehicle, the first squad's intelligence officer Peter, who was tightly strapped into his seat, listened for a bit before suddenly taking off the earplugs in his ears. He muttered, "Damn, isn't this defensive array's effect too good? I thought that my ears would be deafened, but now it seems like it's not that much better than the buzzing of mosquitoes." Captain Eiffel laughed and slapped him on the shoulder as he taunted, "I already said that you were too fragile. How about it? The battlefield isn't as terrifying as you think, right?" Peter rolled his eyes at Captain Eiffel. "I say, Captain," who was the one who was worried that the armored magic vehicle would be turned into a sieve by the rain of arrows last night? Captain Eiffel chuckled and didn't look embarrassed at all. "After all, since we got this armored magic vehicle, we've only been training it and we haven't had any real battles. I heard that the Sac Kingdom had developed powerful military magic machines before, so I was worried that our vehicle wouldn't be able to take it, so it isn't strange at all." After saying this, Captain Eiffel turned his head and looked around the armored magic vehicle that wasn't that big. He couldn't help giving a nod of praise. "Now it seems like the new flyer's things are really strong. It's fine if he didn't react at all after being hit by so many arrows, but he was hit by 2 of the Sac Kingdom's magic cannons and wasn't affected at all. He really is strong, I like it." "Hey, Captain, this isn't related to the armored magic vehicle, it's just that the protective array under it is too good." The driver, Sacmarin, cut in. "Speaking of this protective array," Captain Eiffel looked down at the faint blue light under the armored magic vehicle and slightly knit his brows. "It really is strange. When the new flyer was developing the armored magic vehicle, it wasn't a problem to use this protective array to strengthen the armored magic vehicle, but why did they add in a sound insulating effect? Could it be that they think that we soldiers are as weak as that kid Peter?" Peter loudly protested, but Captain Eiffel waved his hand to cut him off. Then he asked Sacmarin, "Hey, how long can we last with our current energy consumption? If it doesn't work, just turn off some of the protective arrays. We don't know how long we'll be here." Sacmarin nodded. He lowered his head and glanced at the sink-like thing on the control panel in front of him. He smiled easily. "We've only used 1/5 of our energy reserve. Even if there's a dense attack, it isn't a problem for us to last half an hour. Idiot, we're not just here to be target. There are other missions that require magic power. Keep an eye on it at all times. Don't use it all up, understand?" Captain Eiffel scolded and turned to look at Peter. "Is there still no news from those bastards in the sky?" There was also a small control panel in front of Peter, but it was completely different from the control panel of the armored magic vehicle in front of Sacmarin. This control panel was just a square tablet with a faint red light flashing on it. There wasn't anything special about it. Hearing Captain Eiffel's question, Peter looked down at the control panel and shook his head. "There's still no news. I think that they haven't investigated it yet, so we might have to wait." When he said this, the magic communicator in Peter's hand suddenly rang. There were blue glows that appeared on the control panel in front of him, as if they were stars that lit up the interior of the armored magic vehicle. Peter's eyes immediately lit up. "It's here." Chapter 938. Captain Eiffel immediately came over and looked down at the control panel. But after looking at it for a while, he suddenly shook his head. "I don't understand." "Hey, Peter, tell me what is going on?" Peter couldn't help rolling his eyes. He took out a map from his chest and took it out. Look, Captain, this is the detailed map of the Muerto Mountains that the reconnaissance airship team gave us the day before yesterday. Compare it with the blue dots on it and you can see the information that the reconnaissance airship team gave us this time. Let me see it. Captain Eiffel took the map and looked at the complicated dots on the control panel for a while before putting it back in Peter's hands. Explain. Peter gave a helpless sigh. He compared the map with the dots on the control panel before putting the map on the control panel. The dots of light came out from under the map and there were bright icons on the map. Here, Captain, look. These dots of light represent the current situation of the Sac Kingdom's enemy forces from the reconnaissance airship team. For example, this one that is closest to us. Peter looked up and calculated in his heart before pointing to the front right of the armored magic vehicle. It shouldn't be far from there. Based on the information beside the dots of light, there should be around 1,000 people. Then what about the most important logistics warehouse? Captain Eiffel asked. Peter looked at the map for a while before pointing to a bright dot to the northwest. It should be here. It should be around 70 to 80 kilometers away from us. Good. Captain Eiffel clapped his hands. Since we've found the other side's people and warehouse, it's time for us to make a move. After saying this, Captain Eiffel charged to the control panel in front of Sakmarin and grabbed a magic communicator. He pressed a button on it and shouted, "Brothers, focus and prepare to move. Peter will send the information on our target to you later. Look carefully for me." "Yes." "Received." "All right, Captain." There was an orderly response that came from the magic communicator. Captain Eiffel turned to Peter and said, "Immediately calculate our route and send it to them." "Yes." When it came to business, Peter stopped smiling and lowered his head to calculate on the map and the light spot on the podium. "Sakmarin, drive the car, don't just stay here and take a beating. We need to test the reaction of those bastards from the Sac Kingdom. Robin, don't be idle, keep watching the situation outside for me. If any Sac Kingdom bastards dare appear in front of us, don't be polite and beat them to death for me. Marco, check the status of our supplies. Next, we need to carry out a long-distance raid. You have to make sure that we don't stop halfway, understand? All right, get moving. Don't just stand there." Boys, today is our first official mission since the establishment of the Special Mobile Brigade. We must not mess it up. After giving orders to each person, Captain Eiffel listened for a bit and found that it was quiet outside. He opened the armored magic vehicle and poked his head out again. The sky was no longer filled with arrows and those terrifying fireballs flying back and forth, and the intense summer sun once again appeared. Looking around, he discovered that the ground around him was filled with arrows. It was as if a dense patch of grass had suddenly grown out of the ground. Other than that, there were holes that were around 2-3 meters wide in the grass, but they didn't seem deep and they weren't that dense. Che, those fellows from the Sac Kingdom are always bragging, saying that their military magic machines aren't worse than the New Flyers and that their magic cannons are even stronger than the New Flyers' magic cannons. If it was up to me, how could they compare? After carefully looking around and listening for a bit, Captain Eiffel suddenly jumped out of the armored magic vehicle. He built several iron sheets in a hole that was smaller than the surrounding area because of the explosion and then pulled out several arrows that were stuck in the ground before returning to the armored magic vehicle. "Hey, Captain, what are you carrying this bunch of broken things back for?" The other 3 people other than Peter looked at him in surprise. "Orders from above." Captain Eiffel pointed upwards. Captain Eiffel pointed at the New Flyers' orders. "They want us to gather as much information as possible on the Sac Kingdom's military magic machines." "What kind of information can you get from these broken things?" Marco, who had finished inspecting the supplies, came over and took the iron sheets in Captain Eiffel's hands, looking them over. "These things should be magic cannon shells, right? Why do they feel so brittle?" After saying this, Marco tapped the iron sheets before shaking his head with a look of disdain. Such thin iron sheets, what use are they? Captain Eiffel lowered his head and looked at the arrows in his hand. He was surprised to find that these arrows were of different sizes. Some of them were made of fine iron, while others only had iron arrowheads. The body of the arrow was still made of wood. Hey, those fellows from the Sac Kingdom can't even make the most basic arrows, and they're not embarrassed to say that they have military magic machines? What a joke! Marco looked at the arrows in Captain Eiffel's hand and couldn't help laughing. Captain, you're mistaken. The Sac Kingdom doesn't even have a steel mill, they can't produce high-quality steel at all, so they can only call these iron arrows. What kind of iron arrows are these? That's right. Captain Eiffel patted his head and threw the arrows to the side before curling his lips. It's a waste that the army headquarters and the new flyer place such importance on the Sac Kingdom. What kind of broken thing is this? It's not worth being nervous at all. Hey Peter, you! Just as he turned his head, Peter suddenly shouted, Done! Done? Captain Eiffel was surprised. Done. Captain, I've already calculated the best route that will allow us to avoid all the Sac Kingdom's strongholds and kill our way to their warehouse as quickly as possible. Peter excitedly said, Good, immediately send this route to the others. Captain Eiffel gave this order before grabbing the magic communicator from the console again. Everyone, pay attention. Peter will immediately send the route to you. I'll give you 3 minutes to prepare and then listen to my orders to set out together. There were replies that came from the magic communicator again. Peter's finger tapped on the console, and there was a flash of light on the console. It formed a long and thin line that went deep into the Sac Kingdom on the map. Then, Peter tapped on the console, and the line formed by these dots of light suddenly flickered. All right, the route is through, Peter said to Captain Eiffel. Captain Eiffel gave a slight nod. All right, everyone prepare, we'll set out in 5 minutes. When Captain Eiffel said this, the people in the armored magic vehicle fell silent and the atmosphere became a bit tense. Properly speaking, they were all veterans of the Lampari Kingdom's Northern Army, so there shouldn't be this kind of tense atmosphere before a battle. But this time they were using the armored magic vehicle, this new type of transport, while also being equipped with military magic machines that completely surpassed their understanding of war. This was their first time fighting a new type of war. Although they had already grasped the use of these novel things in their normal training, an actual battle was different from training, so it wasn't an exaggeration to say that this was their first time. Not to mention that after the Lampari Kingdom declared war on the Sac Kingdom, before the armies of both sides met for the first time, the outside world had a strong interest in this war and had a very special expectation. Almost all public opinion said that this war between the two countries would represent the direction of the Signs War in the future. Whichever side performed better in this war would decide which side the continent would lean toward. Or to be more specific, if the Lampari Kingdom won this war, it would without a doubt prove that the new Flyers' military magic machines were stronger than the Sac Kingdom's. For the Lampari Kingdom's side, it proved that the new Flyers' military magic machines were stronger. It also proved that the new Flyers' support would increase the status of the Lampari Kingdom. A deeper influence would be that the magic machine industry led by the new flyer in the Lampari Kingdom would receive a higher evaluation, which would bring great benefits to the Lampari Kingdom. These things had been clearly analyzed in the newspapers, so even a low-level Northern Army officer like Captain Eiffel had some understanding of this. Their lack of confidence in their first war, as well as the severity of the impact it would have on this war, made these veterans who had experienced hundreds of battles unavoidably nervous. After 5 minutes of silence, Captain Eiffel saw that it was time and suddenly stood up. He grabbed the magic communicator and gave the order in a deep voice, set off. Sakmarin took a deep breath and looked at Robin, who was responsible for the firepower of the armored magic vehicles, before pressing the button on the control panel. There was a faint blue light that came from the bottom of the armored magic vehicle, quickly covering the entire chassis. The armored magic vehicle that weighed 3 tons and carried 5 large men, as well as some military magic machines and supplies, weighed over 5 tons. It had been silently hiding in the small forest under the Muerto Mountains, but after the faint blue light flashed, it was like an agile rabbit as it suddenly jumped out of its hiding place. After a while, it had already moved over 100 meters on the bumpy ground. After Captain Eiffel's armored magic vehicle charged out, there were several dozen armored magic vehicles that charged out of the small forest, charging to the left. Not long after, this special mobile squad of armored magic vehicles that belonged to the Lampari Kingdom's northern army went around the 2 armies fighting on the right. They were like a sharp blade that pierced into the Sak Kingdom's heartland. Chapter 939. Hong! A violent explosion suddenly sounded, and flames instantly lit up the entire sky, drowning a temporary warehouse hidden in the periphery of a small town in front of them. Seeing that he had succeeded, Captain Eiffel went back into the armored magic vehicle and took out the magic communicator to give the order: immediately retreat to the southwest at 8 o'clock. Peter will send the route to you later, follow the route. Brats, follow me closely. This is the Sak Kingdom. If anyone falls behind, no one will wait for you. There was a sound of acknowledgement from the magic communicator before there was a burst of laughter. I say, Captain, we're running this fast. Even if someone falls behind, those brats from the Sak Kingdom definitely won't be able to catch us, so be assured. Captain Eiffel gave a cold snort. There are times when a warhorse sprains its ankle. Although this armored magic vehicle is good, can you guarantee that it won't break? The voice on the other side froze and there was nothing to say. Alright, cut the crap. This is a war, not a movie. If something happens, no one will give you a chance. Captain Eiffel said in a serious tone. Captain Eiffel's voice became even more serious. Listen to the damage management of each vehicle. Pay attention to the situation of your armored magic vehicle at all times. You have to make sure that nothing unexpected happens. Do you understand? Understood. Understood. Be assured, Captain. This time, what came from the magic communicator was the damage management of each armored magic vehicle. Captain Eiffel gave a satisfied nod. He turned to see Peter give him a signal that it was done, so he gave the order: set off at full speed. The 25 armored magic vehicles belonging to the first squad of the Lampari Kingdom's Northern Army's 3rd Special Mobile Brigade quickly gathered together and formed a flood of steel. They quickly entered a small path to the west of the town and left in an instant. After around 10 minutes, a group of light cavalry wearing the uniform of the Sak Kingdom's Greedy Regiment came out of the town in a cloud of dust. Seeing the flames in front of them and the mess on the ground, the leader of the cavalry was shocked. After receiving the news that the logistics warehouse had been raided, he immediately led his light cavalry and rushed over. The journey took less than 20 minutes, which was already very fast. However, judging from the current situation, the warehouse was already engulfed in a sea of fire, and the enemy was nowhere to be seen. The cavalry captain couldn't believe his eyes. After all, this logistics warehouse was one of the most important warehouses that the Tanlang Corps had prepared for the battle against the Lampari Kingdom. In order to protect this place, the Tanlang Corps had sent out an entire regiment, a total of 2,000 elites. However, this heavy armored regiment, which was known for its defense, was actually broken through in such a short amount of time and destroyed the warehouse that they had to protect even if they had to risk their lives to protect? How could this be? The cavalry leader looked around and found that other than the corpses of the soldiers in the Hungry Wolf Corps uniforms scattered around the warehouse, there were no other living people. He was even more furious. These bastards! They actually dared to neglect their duties. There were 2,000 people in this regiment, and although there were many corpses around, there were only a few hundred of them. Where did the rest of them go? The cavalry captain waved his hand and signaled his deputy to lead a group of people to search around while he led a few people to rummage through the corpses. After finding a soldier who seemed to have survived because he had fainted, the cavalry leader slapped him in the face without any hesitation, waking him up. Devil! The devil is here! What the cavalry leader didn't expect was that when this soldier woke up, he immediately had a look of fear on his face. He quickly moved back, like he had been greatly frightened. What devil, open your dog eyes for me! The cavalry leader angrily roared out. The soldier trembled and was stunned before his eyes gradually regained their clarity. Tell me, just what is going on here? Where's the enemy? Which direction did they run in? Seeing him barely calm down, the cavalry leader immediately asked this. Hearing the word enemy, the soldier's face filled with fear. I don't know what happened either. We were guarding outside when suddenly. The soldier pointed at the forest some distance to the south of the warehouse. A bunch of steel monsters came out from there. Before we could react, the group of monsters shot out countless fireballs. Then, I was directly knocked out by these fireballs. Seeing the soldier's confused face, the cavalry leader helplessly shook his head. The poor guy in front of him was clearly scared out of his wits. He couldn't get anything out of him. But there were some clues from his words. It seemed like the enemy had come from the south, so there was no doubt that it was a small team sent by the Lampuri Kingdom's northern army to attack the warehouse. But there were two questions that he couldn't understand. How did the Lampari Kingdom know that the warehouse was here? How did this raiding team pass through the layers of iron chain-like defenses between this place and the Muerto Mountains, penetrate deep into this place, and execute a precise attack on this material warehouse? However, when this question appeared in the cavalry leader's mind, he shook his head and threw it away. Now wasn't the time to think about these questions. The most important thing was that the enemy had already charged in. If they didn't catch them and stop them, they would definitely cause even more damage to the rear. From the steel monsters that the soldier mentioned, the cavalry leader guessed that the Lampari Kingdom had sent a small team using the high mobility of magic cars, so he had his subordinates search the ground for traces. After a while, they found a clear trace that led to the south of the town. Looking in the direction this trace led, the cavalry leader's expression changed again. About 10 kilometers in this direction, there was another important material warehouse. If his guesses weren't wrong, the Lampari Kingdom's small team should be heading to this warehouse. Everyone follow. Quickly! The cavalry leader roared out and jumped onto his horse. He called out to his subordinates to follow this clear trace to the west. After around 20 minutes, the cavalry leader's light cavalry had already crossed over 10 kilometers. However, before he could reach the warehouse, he could already see a bright flame rising into the sky in front of him. There were also several plumes of smoke rising straight into the sky. The cavalry leader's heart sunk. After speeding in the direction of the fire and smoke, he found that the facts were not out of his expectations. This material warehouse that was originally set up here and was also heavily guarded was now in a sea of fire. It could be said that it was almost completely destroyed. When they came close, they met another group of light cavalry that had come to support them. The other side saw the warehouse covered in flames and smoke at the same time, with looks of shock on their faces. After the two sides met, the cavalry leader described the situation to the other side's leader. The two sides didn't talk much as they quickly gathered and followed the traces left by the enemy, heading northeast. However, in the direction they were heading, what awaited them was a destroyed warehouse and a mess on the ground. Not only did they not catch up to the enemy, as time went on, they found that the distance between them and the enemy seemed to be increasing. Such a mysterious enemy force that they could not even catch a glimpse of was undoubtedly a huge problem. Soon, the Tanlang regiment received the news and quickly mobilized the troops left behind to strengthen the defenses of the various supply bases. At the same time, they gathered their forces and followed the traces left by the enemy to surround them. They wanted to catch this group of enemy that dared to sneak into the hinterland. However, the reality was even more shocking. No matter how many people the Tanlang regiment mobilized to chase and surround them, the enemy that snuck in seemed to be able to predict the future. They avoided the Tanlang regiment's army in advance, and escaped through the gaps before the encirclement was formed. What was even worse was that after they escaped, they didn't choose to retreat immediately. Instead, they continued to ambush the Tanlang regiment's rear. In just a single day, the enemy had already destroyed 13 warehouses and 37 sentry posts of the Tanlang regiment. It could be said that the rear was filled with chaos. What gave the Tanlang regiment the biggest headache was that from the small-scale battles before, the Lampari Kingdom's assault team didn't have that many people, but their battle strength was very shocking. Even if they met a Tanlang regiment team of 1,000 or 2,000, they could easily defeat them. So even if the Tanlang regiment wanted to catch these enemies, they had to send out enough forces to deal with them. At this time, the Tanlang regiment was already struggling to deal with them, so they couldn't send out enough forces to deal with this small team. Helpless, the Tanlang regiment could only give up on scattering their supplies to make it easier for them to resupply. They gathered all their supplies in the largest supply base. This largest supply base was the core of the Tanlang regiment, so there were at least 5,000 elites guarding it. There were also many military magic machines that the Sak Kingdom had developed to protect it. With the strength of the Lampari Kingdom's assault team, it was impossible for them to attack this supply base because that would be seeking their own death. What happened next proved the Tanlang regiment's guess. After gathering all their supplies, that mysterious enemy never appeared again. However, the Tanlang regiment never would have thought that this mysterious enemy that gave them such a headache would have already left the Sak Kingdom and returned to the Lampari Kingdom's northern army's territory in the Muerto Mountains. Chapter 940. Captain Eiffel jumped out of the armored magic vehicle, and as soon as his feet touched the ground, 3 men and a woman wearing the new flyer uniform came forward. One of the young men reached his hand out to Captain Eiffel. "Captain Eiffel, please give us the battle report." Captain Eiffel gave a thumbs up to the back. "Get it from that fellow behind you. I have to report to my superiors first." The 3 of them nodded and went around him, taking the battle report from Peter. After looking it over, the woman, Peter, and Sakmarin returned to the armored magic vehicle. The 2 men, Robin and Marco, went around the armored magic vehicle to inspect it. Seeing these people busy themselves again, Captain Eiffel shook his head. He thought that new flyer really was troublesome. It was a good thing he didn't need to deal with these fellows. These 3 were engineers from New Flyer. It's said that they were sent here by New Flyer to inspect the military magic machines of the Northern Army. The 3 of them were mainly responsible for the armored magic vehicles of the Special Forces. Every time Captain Eiffel came back from a mission, they had to submit a detailed battle report. They were required to record everything that happened during the battle. The most important thing was the various accidents that happened during the battle that affected the armored magic vehicles. The explanation given by New Flyer was that they could use these battle reports to collect data on the armored magic vehicles and use this data to make improvements to the armored magic vehicles. Because of this goal, these engineers kept asking the soldiers who actually operated the armored magic vehicles for their opinions. In order to obtain first-hand information, these engineers didn't mind asking questions. They would ask the soldiers about the details that they couldn't think of. Captain Eiffel and his subordinates were all rough men, so how could they take this trouble? However, other than Captain Eiffel, who could use the excuse of reporting to his superiors to escape, the others couldn't escape at all. Cooperating with New Flyer was a direct order from the Lampari Kingdom's army headquarters, so the normal soldiers could only listen. Seeing a male engineer pull Robin over and point at an ordinary groove on the outside of the armored magic vehicle, Captain Eiffel gave a laugh of schadenfreude before turning to head to the command center of the camp. After taking a few steps, there was a buzzing sound that came from above. Captain Eiffel immediately looked up and saw 5 magic airships slowly rising into the sky. They turned into 5 black dots that couldn't be seen as they flew to the north. Hey, those idiots from the Sack Kingdom, they should be crying to death soon. Captain Eiffel was in a good mood as he walked into the command center. Report. The Special Mobile Army's 1st Squad's Commander Sherlock Eiffel report. As soon as he entered the gate of the command center, Captain Eiffel gave a salute. Inside the command center, a few senior officers of the Northern Battlefront Army and several advisors were studying a sand table in the middle. Hearing Eiffel's report, the Northern Battlefront Army's commander, General Rudolph Taildon, waved at him. "All right, quickly come over. Eiffel, your 1st squad just went to the Hungry Wolf Regiment's backyard and came back. Tell me, how is the situation?" Captain Eiffel looked up with a proud smile that couldn't be hidden as he loudly replied, "Reporting to the general, we were very relaxed in their backyard, it was no different from going on a field trip." General Teuton laughed before patting Captain Eiffel's shoulder. Then he pointed at the sand table in front of him and said, "Tell me about what you did in the past few days." Captain Eiffel's mind trembled. He looked at the sand table in front of him that was based on the map the reconnaissance airship team had obtained and described to the surrounding people how his 1st squad had caused trouble in the Hungry Wolf Regiment's backyard over the past 2 days. Actually, regarding their actions in the past 2 days, the reconnaissance magic airships that had been following them in the sky already knew about it and had reported it to the Northern Army's command center. What these people wanted to know now was just a few details. "Eiffel, you just said that the Hungry Wolf Regiment's light cavalry chased after you for 2 days and couldn't catch up to you at all. What specifically happened?" General Teuton suddenly asked. Captain Eiffel was suddenly interrupted and was surprised. He tilted his head to think before replying, They couldn't catch up. The armored magic vehicles are much faster than the horses of the light cavalry, so there were several times when we saw them chasing us. As long as we found a direction to run in, we would be able to throw them off without even seeing their shadows. With the difference in speed, their war horses need to rest and our armored magic vehicles don't, so how could they catch up? I believe that you can easily throw them off on normal plains, but what if the terrain is complicated? The war horses should be able to adapt to the terrain better than the armored magic vehicles, so how did you deal with them? General Teuton asked. Captain Eiffel laughed. "General, of course it's hard for us to run on complicated terrain, but why do we have to race them on complicated terrain? Actually, we've been running in circles with them over the past few days, so they couldn't catch up to us at all. Adding in the fact that the reconnaissance airship gave us information on their forces, it wasn't hard at all." "Oh." General Teuton turned to look at the other officers and staff officers before saying with a nod, "Very good, if it's like this, it seems like we can experiment with the new tactic we thought of before." Experiment? New tactic? Captain Eiffel looked at General Teuton in confusion. General Teuton turned to look at him and revealed a smile. "All right, Captain Eiffel, you and your subordinates have done an outstanding job, so now go back and rest. If nothing unexpected happens, there will be an even more important mission for you in 2 days, so prepare yourselves." "Yes, Lord General." Captain Eiffel immediately gave the order in a loud voice before leaving the command center. Although he cared about what General Teuton said very much, since General Teuton wasn't planning on telling him now, it meant that he didn't need to know for now. After leaving the command center, he didn't immediately return to his barracks to sleep. Instead, he went to the simple bathhouse specially prepared by the camp to take a comfortable bath. Then, he went to the canteen to have a full meal. Only then did he return to his barracks to lie down with extreme satisfaction. Feeling the cool breeze from the large magic fan in the corner of the room, Captain Eiffel couldn't help letting out a comfortable groan. How is this a fucking war? It's simply a trip for the nobles. It was no wonder Captain Eiffel gave this kind of emotional sigh. As a veteran of the Northern Army for many years, Captain Eiffel had fought the Sac Kingdom's Hungry Wolf Regiment several times. Before this, in the 10 years he had served, because of the Lampari Kingdom's financial problems, the Northern Army's supplies had always been very hard to come by. It was already very hard to maintain the basic equipment of the Northern Army, not to mention the other logistical supplies. In the previous battles, the soldiers of the Northern Battlefront Army only had one meal to eat. They only ate the simplest and coarsest steamed buns. Sometimes they would hunt some wild animals to fill their stomach. As for vegetables, it was very hard to see them. One was because they were poor and two was because it was hard to transport them. As for sleeping, there was even less hope. Most of the time, they would thank the heavens if they had a simple tent. As for warm blankets, they didn't even need to think about it. Every winter, the Northern Army couldn't even have enough cotton-padded clothes. Even if they had cotton-padded clothes, most of them were of poor quality. They couldn't even keep the soldiers warm. Once winter came, the Northern Army would lose quite a few non-combat soldiers because of the cold. However, since the appearance of the new flyer, the Northern Army's days became better day by day. With the support of the Frestec Chamber of Commerce, the Northern Army had obtained the military magic machines, suppressing the Hungry Wolf Regiment for the first time. They had the absolute advantage on the battlefield, which made all the Northern Army soldiers happy. When the Lampari Kingdom's financial situation gradually improved and adding in the development of the magic machine industry in the Lampari Kingdom, the various aspects of manufacturing increased, causing the Northern Army's logistical supplies to undergo an earth-shattering change. To be specific, take the most basic food and clothing as an example. The Northern Army was now equipped with large amounts of magic stoves, allowing the Northern Army soldiers to cook whenever they wanted, and they didn't need to worry about the smoke from the stoves exposing themselves. Adding in the powerful transportation ability of the Lampari Kingdom, it ensured that all kinds of fresh food would be delivered to the Northern Army, allowing them to eat nutritious meals at any time. What made Captain Eiffel and most of the Northern Army soldiers happy was the fact that they would almost always have meat. Ever since the new flyer worked with the 2 elven tribes and several companies in the Lampari Kingdom to open several poultry farms, the amount of meat produced in the Lampari Kingdom had greatly increased. Right now, the normal citizens of the Lampari Kingdom didn't find meat as rare as before. The rough soldiers were able to obtain the largest amount of meat from the military headquarters. In terms of clothing, the military headquarters had already appointed the Armani Chamber of Commerce as the military uniform supplier. With the Armani Chamber of Commerce's powerful clothing manufacturing ability, no matter how many clothes the military headquarters needed, the Armani Chamber of Commerce would be able to provide them on time. The clothes that Captain Eiffel was wearing right now, from the inside to the outside, even the underwear was made by the Armani Chamber of Commerce. Because he was a low-level officer, the quality of his clothes was a bit better than normal soldiers. Even if he wasn't in the army, he would look very stylish if he wore it out and the quality was good. Captain Eiffel had already thought that when he retired from the army, he could bring back the clothes that were given to him each year. It would be enough for him to not need to buy new clothes, and he could save quite a bit of money. Comparing the two, if it was said that the Northern Army soldiers resisting the attacks of the Hungry Wolf Regiment and even their normal days in the Muerto Mountains were a kind of torture, now it was simply like they were in heaven. Captain Eiffel thought about the changes while enjoying the cool breeze from the magic fan, feeling incomparably comfortable. After a while, he fell into a deep sleep. Chapter 941. If someone was happy, naturally there would be people who were worried. When Captain Eiffel fell asleep, the new commander of the Hungry Wolf Regiment, Toby Ted, had a dark look on his face as he looked at the battle report in his hand. In the end, he couldn't hold back the rage in his heart as he slapped the battle report on the table in front of him. Who the F***CK can tell me what the F***CK is going on? Commander Ted's eyes were wide open, and they were spitting out endless fury. The other Hungry Wolf Regiment soldiers in the tent all lowered their heads, and no one responded. The entire tent fell into a deathly silence. Seeing the reactions of the others, Commander Ted became even angrier, but he couldn't find a place to vent his anger. This was because the sudden attack on the supply base wasn't because someone had made a mistake, rather they weren't prepared for the Lampari Kingdom's attack at all. They had placed 10,000 elite soldiers in the last and most important supply base, and had set up layers of blockades along the way. They didn't want to give that annoying Lampari Kingdom team any chance. However, they never would have thought that the attack of the Lampari Kingdom's northern army wouldn't come from any corner of the continent, but rather from the sky. According to the report, the 5 magic airships had suddenly appeared above the supply base yesterday afternoon and dropped countless magic bombs without any mercy. In less than 5 minutes, the supply base had been turned into a sea of flames. Because it happened so suddenly and the other side's attack was so fierce, the soldiers in charge of defending the supply base couldn't react at all. Of course, even if they could react, they couldn't deal with the 5 magic airships high up in the sky at all. Although there were 10 magicians left in the defending army to be safe, according to the report, these 10 magicians couldn't even fly into the sky under the attack of the 5 magic airships, so naturally they couldn't fight back. In the end, the defending army could only watch as the 5 magic airships attacked the supply base in the sky, but they couldn't do anything about it. Moreover, the attack of the magic airships was too strong, so the defending army could only withdraw most of their people. They didn't have any extra energy to save the precious supplies at all. As a result, the Hungry Wolf Corps was in a dire situation. The most important logistical resource for an army was almost depleted, and the Lampari Kingdom's northern battlefront army was still pressuring them, giving them no chance to breathe. However, if they wanted to counterattack, they would need even more supplies. Not mentioning anything else, just the 100 magic cannons of the Hungry Wolf Regiment needed large amounts of magic shells to support them. Without enough supplies, these 100 magic cannons were just decorations. After throwing a fit, Commander Ted forced himself to calm down. As all their supplies had been destroyed, there was no way the Hungry Wolf Corps could withstand the attacks of the Lampari Kingdom's northern battlefront army. They could only retreat. However, once they retreated here, it was equal to giving up the most important gateway to the Sac Kingdom. It would allow the Lampari Kingdom's army to invade the Sac Kingdom without any scruples. So even if they retreated, they had to make careful arrangements. At least they had to wait for the White Tiger Regiment's reinforcements to arrive. Of course, if the army headquarters could react quickly and send another batch of supplies from the kingdom, they would still have a chance to fight. However, Commander Ted knew very well that this was almost impossible. Not to mention that it would take several days for the army headquarters to receive his request for reinforcements, and it would take some time for them to make a decision. The most headache-inducing thing was that it would take them at least a week to send the supplies to the Hungry Wolf Regiment. Thinking of this, Commander Ted couldn't help cursing in his heart. When he took over the Hungry Wolf Regiment and the southern defenses of the kingdom, he had suggested to the army headquarters to build a road that connected the Hungry Wolf Regiment's camp to the depths of the kingdom, making it easier to transport supplies, but the army headquarters had rejected this idea. The reason given by the army headquarters was that it would cost at least 500,000 gold coins to build a road. Instead of spending this money here, it was better to spend it on other things, like making more magic cannons for the military magic machine research facility. However, based on the current situation, the increase in traffic brought by the road was clearly more important. If the Sac Kingdom had roads like the Lampari Kingdom, as well as countless transport magic cars, it didn't matter if the Hungry Wolf Regiment's supply base was destroyed, because with this convenient transportation, they could quickly resupply and didn't need to worry at all. Commander Ted was certain that the Lampari Kingdom's northern battlefront army would have the supplies that he dreamed of. Because there were roads all over the Lampari Kingdom, and there were countless transport magic cars that had replaced horse carriages, it would guarantee that they could receive new supplies in the shortest amount of time. The most important thing was that the other side had an advantage that they couldn't deal with at all, which was the magic airship. Thinking of this, Commander Ted looked up at the top of the tent. After thinking for a bit, he looked down and his face was back to normal. Pass down the order, give up on Intact Mountain. Everyone will withdraw and return to Novak Pass. Everyone in the tent raised their heads in unison and looked at Commander Ted in astonishment. General, are we retreating? An officer couldn't help asking. That's right. Commander Ted nodded expressionlessly. Commander Ted gave a nod. Now that the supply base has been destroyed, we don't have the ability to stay here and fight the other side. Instead of being broken through in a few days, it's better to retreat now and preserve our strength. Everyone looked at each other before giving a sigh. Although they weren't willing, they knew in their hearts that the Lord Commander was completely right. The Hungry Wolf Regiment was already having a hard time dealing with the Northern Battlefront Army, and now that their supplies had suffered such a heavy blow, it was impossible for them to keep going. Other than that, Upton, in the report to the Army headquarters, you have to focus on the threat of the other side's magic airship. If possible, I hope that the Army headquarters can send great magicians to the front lines to help. Everyone was surprised again. So in the mind of the Lord Commander, the threat of the magic airships was already this big that they even needed to use great magicians to deal with them? But thinking about it, that was right. The battle of the supply base yesterday showed that normal soldiers couldn't pose any threat to the magic airships in the sky. The only ones who could attack in the air were the magicians, but those magicians who weren't that high couldn't even approach the magic airships with their dense attacks, so they couldn't play much of a role. The only ones who could pose a threat to the magic airships were great magicians. But the Sac Kingdom only had 7 great magicians, so they wouldn't easily move out. Once they really needed to use great magicians, it meant that the Sac Kingdom was in a very serious situation. Thinking of the powerful attacks that the Lampari Kingdom's Northern Battlefront Army had shown in the past few days, as well as the strange abilities they had outside the battlefield that people couldn't even imagine, everyone in the tent was silent and didn't question Commander Ted at all. Seeing the reactions of his subordinates, Commander Ted gave a sigh in his heart. When he took the position of commander of the Hungry Wolf Regiment from Chalon Linear, he thought that with his powerful battle experience and his ability to see the bigger picture, as well as the Sac Kingdom becoming stronger over the past few years, he would be able to reverse the situation of the Hungry Wolf Regiment being suppressed by the Lampari Kingdom's Northern Battlefront Army. He would be able to suppress the Lampari Kingdom like before. But now that he was in this position, he realized why Chalon Linear was so helpless in front of him. Not to mention the large difference in equipment between the Hungry Wolf Regiment and the Lampari Kingdom's Northern Battlefront Army, just in terms of logistics, the difference between the two sides was countless times. The Lampari Kingdom's Northern Battlefront Army had the support of the Lampari Kingdom and the new flyer behind the scenes, so they didn't have to worry about anything. As for the Hungry Wolf Regiment, if they wanted the support of the Sac Kingdom's army headquarters, they had to look at some people's faces. Of course, the most important problem was that with the development of the past few years, the Lampari Kingdom's national strength had grown to a terrifying level. When it came to the battlefield, it showed the disparity in various details. For example, the Lampari Kingdom's northern battlefront armies' shocking firepower and mobility, as well as the 5 magic airships that made people despair. Or the Lampari Kingdom's northern battlefront army's ability to cooperate and control information that people couldn't understand. Commander Ted was very confident in these things in the Hungry Wolf Regiment, but after the real battle began, he found that the Lampari Kingdom's northern battlefront army's strength had surpassed his imagination. They didn't seem like an army that existed in this era at all. This made Commander Ted think of a short article that he had read in the Sac Kingdom's Shinfei Magic Machine Weekly last year. This short article was written by the New Flyers chairman Su Yi, and it was related to the military magic machines. Putting aside the part about the military magic machines, what left the deepest impression on Commander Ted were the words Su Yi said at the end. With the appearance of the military magic machines, the previous method of using soldiers, war horses, bows, and blades has officially become history. With the development of the military magic machines, the new modern method of warfare will be based on seizing information, relying on powerful mobility and firepower to seize time and space. The enemy can't even fight back. With the new method of warfare, the traditional method of warfare can't resist at all, and victory or defeat will be decided before the battle even begins. When he saw this before, Commander Ted gave a snort of disdain. He felt that Su Yi was just bragging about his company's military magic machines. But now that he had personally experienced the battle with the Lampari Kingdom's northern battlefront army for several days, Commander Ted thought of these words and his heart was filled with emotions. Su Yi was right. Because of the appearance of the military magic machines, the war of swords and spears would never return. Chapter 942. The war between the Lampari Kingdom and the Sac Kingdom attracted the attention of everyone in the signs. Before the war officially began, there were many people who had made predictions and analyses of the results of this war. For most people, they would lean towards the Lampari Kingdom, thinking that the Lampari Kingdom had a higher chance of winning. When the war between the two countries began, facts proved that their predictions were correct. The Lampari Kingdom had the advantage. However, no one would have thought that the Lampari Kingdom's advantage over the Sac Kingdom would be this clear. The battle between the two sides in the Muerto Mountains was between the northern army that was known as the strongest in the Lampuri Kingdom and the Hungry Wolf Regiment that was known as the strongest in the Sac Kingdom with the most military magic machines. Countless people were interested in this battle because this was the first time that two armies equipped with military magic machines had fought in the signs, so it had a lot of reference value. Before this, the military magic machines produced by the Shinfei Chamber of Commerce had already been demonstrated in the Kingdom of Ruhr when they repelled the Kanla Empire's 2 invasions, receiving the attention of countless countries. The Sac Kingdom had also announced that they had the ability to mass-produce military magic machines, and they had also demonstrated the powerful battle strength of their military magic machines when they invaded the Antilla Kingdom. So in this battle, everyone wanted to see if the military magic machines produced by the Shinfei Chamber of Commerce were stronger or if the Sac Kingdoms were better. Most people felt that the military magic machines produced by the New Flyer were stronger since the New Flyer had invested more time in them. However, when the two sides really started fighting, the truth still gave everyone a shock. The Sac Kingdom's Hungry Wolf Regiment had been in a short stalemate with the Lampari Kingdom's northern army in the Muerto Mountains for the first 4 days of the battle, but they had been defeated without any suspense. They couldn't resist the attacks of the Lampari Kingdom's northern army at all. In just half a month after the battle began, the vanguard of the Lampari Kingdom's northern army was like a hot knife through butter as they reached the Sac Kingdom's capital, Lordaeron City. Although this vanguard was only a small army of several hundred people, letting an enemy army come all the way to their capital and leave without any losses, this was without a doubt a great shame to the Sac Kingdom. However, the Sac Kingdom couldn't do anything about this shame. On the battlefield, the Hungry Wolf Regiment and the Polar Bear Regiment couldn't stop the advance of the Lampari Kingdom's northern army at all. No matter how strong their defenses were, under the fierce attacks of the Northern Army's magic cannons, they couldn't even hold it for an hour. In just half a month after the battle began, the Sac Kingdom's army had lost over 30,000 people. Even the Polar Bear Regiment that they were proud of that was equipped with large amounts of military magic machines that could compete with the new Flyers Guards had lost most of their battle strength. Seeing that the Northern Army's main force had already reached Lordaeron City and they couldn't stop them at all, the Sac Kingdom finally took the initiative to ask the Lampari Kingdom for peace on the 26th day of the battle. The Lampari Kingdom had surprisingly agreed to this. Following this, the two countries sent out representatives for peace talks that lasted for half a month. There weren't many people who knew the specifics, but according to the information that the Lampari Kingdom released through the Lampari Weekly, the Sac Kingdom had paid a very painful price in the peace talks to have the Lampari Kingdom sign the ceasefire agreement. The Lampari Weekly didn't reveal the details of this price, but just the few that were announced were already shocking. First, the Sac Kingdom ceded 7 cities in the southern province and the southeast province that belonged to them to the Lampari Kingdom. These 7 cities were close to the border between the two countries and they were connected to each other. The total area was over 20,000 square kilometers, which wasn't small at all. The border between the two countries was the Muerto mountain range, so both sides used this mountain range as a natural defense. But now that the Sac Kingdom had ceded the 7 southern cities to the Lampari Kingdom, the Sac Kingdom had lost their natural southern defense. The Lampari Kingdom's military was clearly stronger than the Sac Kingdom's, so this was equal to the Sac Kingdom stripping themselves naked. They had exposed themselves in front of the Lampari Kingdom, so they couldn't resist at all. Second, the Sac Kingdom gave the Lampari Kingdom a total of 20 million gold coins as war compensation. Of course, this compensation wasn't all in cash. In order to pay this compensation, the Sac Kingdom had opened up countless minerals, lumber, herbs, and other resources to the Lampari Kingdom. Third, the Sac Kingdom would completely open up their access to the Lampari Kingdom. This meant that any person or caravan from the Lampari Kingdom wouldn't need to be checked when they entered the Sac Kingdom, just like when they entered and left the Lampari Kingdom. Of course, the Lampari Kingdom had already abolished the entrance tax for the various cities, so the Sac Kingdom cities also couldn't collect entrance taxes. On this, the Lampuri Weekly had specially pointed out a very special place. It was that while the Sac Kingdom was completely open to the Lampari Kingdom, they were also completely open to the New Flyer. This was something that was very easy for people to understand. This was because everyone knew that the New Flyer was the most important supporter of the Lampari Kingdom behind the scenes. The Lampari Kingdom had obtained many benefits from winning this war, so the New Flyer wouldn't be polite. Now that the New Flyer was only asking the Sac Kingdom to completely open up to them, in everyone's eyes, this condition was already too relaxed. After both sides signed the ceasefire agreement, the Northern Army retreated from the Sac Kingdom, but they didn't return to the Lampari Kingdom. Rather, they were stationed in the 7 cities that the Sac Kingdom had ceded to the Lampari Kingdom. They were here to supervise the Sac Kingdom's management of these 7 cities, while waiting for the Lampari Kingdom to send people to take over these 7 cities. Moreover, the Northern Army's garrison would be set up here in the future. This was because the border between the two countries was no longer the Muerto Mountains, but rather the border between these 7 cities and the other cities of the Sac Kingdom. After another month, a delegation set off from the Lampari Kingdom and headed north, arriving in the Sac Kingdom's capital, Lordaeron City 3 days later. This delegation was sent by the Lampari Kingdom's Queen Seveni. They were here to sign the ceasefire agreement with the Sac Kingdom. They were here to discuss the final details of the ceasefire agreement with the Sac Kingdom before finally signing it. They were expected to stay in Lordaeron City for around half a month. When they entered Rotterdam City, a small team left the residence of the delegation and went straight to the Military Magic Machine Research Institute that belonged to the Kingdom's Magic Research Institute in the west of Rotterdam City. This small group didn't belong to the Lampari Kingdom's delegation, rather they were people sent by the new flyer. Their goal for coming here was because in the ceasefire agreement between the two countries, the new flyer had requested the Sac Kingdom to hand over some researchers from the Military Magic Machine Research Facility, so they were here to receive these people. Seeing these people wearing the uniform of the new flyer charge in, Great Magician Maiev, who was in charge of the research facility, naturally didn't have a good expression. "You want us to give people to you? Impossible." Maiev stopped them without any courtesy, speaking in a very impolite tone. "Great Magician Maiev, this is something your country has already agreed on in the ceasefire agreement. You don't have the right to stop us." The one leading the team this time was Miss Favin, who had been promoted from the manager of the Magic Machine Development Workshop to the manager of the new flyer headquarters. Faced with Great Magician Maiev stopping her, she didn't panic at all and calmly stated this fact to Great Magician Maiev. "That agreement was signed by those bastards at the Royal Parliament. It has nothing to do with us." Great Magician Maiev still refused to let them in. Great Magician Maiev still refused to give up. "Our Academy of Magic people aren't managed by the Kingdom's Parliament, they don't have the right to hand us over." Actually, the reason why Great Magician Maiev was this angry was mainly because of his hesitation from before. When the Lampari Kingdom and the Sa-Air Kingdom were fighting, the army had asked for the help of 7 great magicians including him. At that time, Great Magician Maiev used the reason that he was focused on researching more powerful military magic machines to reject them, so he couldn't help. Then there were 5 other great magicians who participated in the battle against the Lampari Kingdom, but according to the news that came back, even with these 5 great magicians, they couldn't defeat the Lampari Kingdom's army on the battlefield. There was even a battle where a great magician tried to sink a magic airship of the Lampari Kingdom's northern army, but he was surrounded by 5 magic airships and fell in the end. It was because of the fall of this great magician that the Sac Kingdom's last bit of faith in resistance was destroyed. It made the king and the kingdom's parliament agree to take the initiative to negotiate. After learning about the fall of that great magician Maiev felt a bit sad, but he also felt happy. He was very happy that he didn't participate in the battle, otherwise if he had fallen, it would have been irreparable. At the same time, because of this, he felt a bit guilty. So when faced with the Frestec Chamber of Commerce that was the main culprit that caused the death of his fellow Great Magician Maiev was filled with rage. However, Phaidon didn't care about him at all. She shook her head and calmly said, "Great Magician Maiev, I have to remind you. Although you don't have to listen to the Sac Kingdom's parliament, you don't have the right to stop others from choosing." Great Magician Maiev was surprised. "What do you mean by this? Could it be that you want to say that my subordinates will take the initiative to go to your new flyer?" Phaidon revealed a faint smile on her calm face as she pointed behind him. "You can ask them for their opinions." Great Magician Maiev was surprised again. He turned around in a daze and saw that a group of subordinates from the Military Magic Machine Research Facility had gathered behind him at an unknown time. These people looked at Phaidon with eyes filled with anticipation and excitement. There wasn't any disgust or hatred at all. Chapter 943. Seveni put down the document in her hand and looked up at Sue-E sitting in front of her, suddenly breaking out in laughter. Sue-E touched his face in confusion. "What? Is there something on my face?" "No, no." Seveni waved her hand and pointed at the document on the table before saying with a smile, "I just feel that. Not only did you steal a bunch of researchers from the Sac Kingdom's Military Magic Machine Research Facility, you also stole all their research materials. This is simply like a robber robbing someone's house. If I was the Sack Kingdom's king, I would definitely hate you to death. Sui gave a laugh, not caring about this at all. This is the choice of those researchers. How can you say that I'm a robber? Willing. Seveni's smile became wider. Seveni's smile became even wider. If it wasn't for your new flyers secretly bribing those researchers ahead of time, why would they willingly come to your new flyer? Being bribed by our company is enough to prove that they aren't loyal to the Sack Kingdom at all. After saying this, Sui gave a cold laugh before continuing, so I only gave these fellows normal research tasks, but I never let them touch the core parts. Seveni couldn't help rolling her eyes at Sui. You clearly gave them all those conditions to lure them over, but now you're saying that they aren't loyal enough. Sui shook his head. Actually, this isn't a matter of loyalty or not. The reason why I leaked some information on the military magic machines to the Sack Kingdom through Teresa was to try to have the Sack Kingdom fully invest in the military magic machines. I hoped that they could develop something new from their point of view. Perhaps it would give our company some inspiration on the military magic machines. Then what are the results now? Has it inspired your company's research? I can't see it now. We need to wait until we absorb the research materials from those researchers before we can determine if it really is useful, Sui said. Seveni was silent for a bit before suddenly asking, "Then what about Teresa? How did you deal with this little girl?" Sui looked at Seveni with a strange gaze, not understanding why she would suddenly care about Teresa. Little girl? She is a spy sent by the Sack Kingdom's army to steal our new flyer's secrets. How could she be considered a little girl? But isn't she beautiful? Furthermore, he seemed to have just turned 20 this year, right? Why aren't you a little girl anymore? Seveni turned and asked with a mysterious look. To be honest, Sui, have you ever had feelings for her? Sui looked at Seveni in surprise. I say. She is a spy sent by the Sack Kingdom. Why would I have feelings for her? That's when you found out later. What about before you found out? I remember that you cared about her a lot during that time. You even asked me to investigate if the situation she mentioned really happened in the Sack Kingdom. Seveni still had a curious look. If you didn't have feelings for her, why would you care about her this much? Sui was speechless. After a while, he said with a sigh, "All right, since she was a little girl at first and had such a pitiful experience, I did want to help her. But after I found out that she was a spy sent by the Sack Kingdom, do you think that I would still have feelings for her?" "That might not be the case," Seveni said with a smile. Seveni said with a smile, "According to the information we've found, Teresa isn't lying at all. Everything she said is true. The only difference is that the Sack Kingdom's army saw that she was beautiful, so they trained her to be a spy. Her background and experiences are so pitiful. Could it be that you don't sympathize with her after knowing this?" Sui slightly knit his brows. "I don't understand what you're saying. I sympathize with her experiences, but that doesn't change the fact that she is a spy. As the new Flyers chairman, how could I have feelings for her?" "So you coldly used her to send the wrong information on the military magic machines to the Sack Kingdom, and then used those things to trick those fellows into doing your research for you before receiving the results?" Seveni looked at Sui and gave a sigh before shaking her head. "Sui, why didn't I see that you were such a sinister fellow before?" Sui didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "I say, Seveni, what's wrong with you? When this plan was made, you participated the entire time, and now you're saying that I'm sinister. Could it be that you want to stay out of this?" Seveni gave a soft snort. "I was just cooperating with you. This entire plan was thought of by you, it isn't related to me." Seeing Seveni's look of disdain, Sui could only helplessly shake his head and give up the idea of arguing with Seveni. This plan against the Sack Kingdom was something that Sui came up with when he found out that Teresa was a spy sent by the Sack Kingdom. In the beginning, he didn't think that much. He just wanted to use Teresa to let the Sac Kingdom obtain the wrong information on the military magic machines, giving them the ability to research the military magic machines. Of course, he didn't plan on letting the Sac Kingdom grasp the method to make large amounts of military magic machines. His goal in doing this was just to make the Sac Kingdom waste more human forces on this. But after the Sac Kingdom invested large amounts of manpower and resources into researching the military magic machines, Su Yi's ideas changed. He began to have Evita control the information given to Teresa, trying to put in some core information. After the Sac Kingdom invested a shocking amount of manpower and resources, they actually developed several military magic machines. The one that the Sac Kingdom invested the most and researched the most was the magic cannon. With the magic repeating crossbows, magic trebuchets, and other military magic machines, the Sac Kingdom thought that they had the military magic machines and had great power. After several years of accumulation, the Sac Kingdom had successfully made quite a few military magic machines, which increased their confidence. Suddenly moving against the Antilla Kingdom to the north was actually a manifestation of this confidence. Of course, it could also be considered a test to see if the military magic machines they made were powerful or not. Facts proved that the Sac Kingdom's research in the military magic machines had been effective, allowing them to easily defeat the Antilla Kingdom's army. However, the Sac Kingdom never would have thought that the Lampari Kingdom would suddenly choose to declare war on the Sac Kingdom at this time. There was no suspense in this war, and the Lampari Kingdom easily won. So this declared that the Sac Kingdom's investment in the military magic machines had been wasted. Rather, New Flyer had taken the most elite researchers and the best research materials from the Sac Kingdom's military magic machine research facility. In this plan, the one that suffered the most was the Sac Kingdom, and the one that gained the most benefits was the Lampari Kingdom. As for New Flyer, they had only stolen some of the military magic machine researchers and materials. From the perspective of others like Seveni, this wasn't considered much of a gain. You can't say it like this. Su Yi slowly shook his head. Gains and investments are proportional. We didn't invest much this time, so our gains are only this much. Moreover, compared to the land and compensation that you need, I care more about these rare researchers and precious materials. Of course, it is also important for the Sac Kingdom to fully open to us. Alright, it can be considered both of us taking what we need. Seveni revealed a naughty smile to Su Yi that she wouldn't show to anyone else. Since the Sac Kingdom signed the peace treaty, and the Lampari Kingdom's officials took over the 7 cities that the Sac Kingdom ceded, Seveni had been in a good mood during this time. For a king, successfully opening up new territory for their country was without a doubt the greatest achievement. This was something that none of the previous kings of the Lampari Kingdom could do, only Seveni had succeeded. Moreover, this was defeating the Sac Kingdom that had suppressed the Lampari Kingdom for several hundred years, taking land from the Sac Kingdom. This made this achievement even more shocking. After receiving this news, the Lampari Kingdom was filled with excitement. Almost all the newspapers in the country were singing praises for Queen Seveni, and there were even countless people who called Queen Seveni the greatest queen in the history of the Lampari Kingdom. Because of this victory, Seveni's prestige in the Lampari Kingdom had reached a peak. It could be said that as long as Seveni said a single word, there was no one in the Lampari Kingdom that dared to go against her. If one was to talk about the benefits for Su Yi, this was one of them. Now that Seveni had won this war, she had more control over the Lampari Kingdom. Adding in the large benefits she could obtain from the Sac Kingdom, the plans that couldn't be implemented in the Lampari Kingdom before could now be implemented without any scruples. One of them was the plan to set up the magic communication network. Su Yi took the initiative to come to Anvilmar City to see Seveni today to discuss a few plans. But when he was about to speak, Seveni suddenly said to Su Yi with a smile, "Hey, Su Yi, give Teresa to me, alright?" Chapter 944. After walking out of the Lampari Kingdom's royal palace, Sui couldn't help looking back before helplessly shaking his head. Why did Seveni have to steal Teresa? This little girl who had received a bit of training as a spy in the Sac Kingdom's army headquarters, the only value she had other than her appearance was the magic machine knowledge she had gained from working in the New Flyer for a while. If Seveni wanted to obtain this knowledge through her, there was no need for that at all. Because since he had his suspicions about Teresa, Sui had Evita keep watching her. Then he deliberately controlled the information she had access to. She did know some important technology for the New Flyer, but with just her, she couldn't do anything. Not to mention that Sui had Evita mix in some fake information. Even if others obtained it, the final result would be the same as the Sac Kingdom, where the investment and output wouldn't match. Of course, the Sac Kingdom's battle strength in the war against the Antilla Kingdom was very strong in the eyes of the other countries on the continent, but it wasn't enough in Suyi's eyes at all. He was very clear that the Sac Kingdom's military magic machines had many flaws, but because the Lampari Kingdom had defeated the Sac Kingdom too easily, he didn't even tell Seveni about these flaws and let the Lampari Kingdom's army take advantage of them. So Teresa wasn't important in Suyi's eyes at all. Before the Lampari Kingdom started their war against the Sac Kingdom, he had Evita expose her disguise and lock her up. Objectively speaking, for a spy who had stolen important secrets from the New Flyer, Sui should have given her a corresponding punishment. There were even many countries that would directly execute this kind of person. However, Vivian had always treated Teresa as a good friend and kept pleading for her, making it hard for Sui to do anything. Now that Seveni had taken the initiative to ask Sui for Teresa, she had indirectly helped Sui solve this problem. It's fine, she didn't cause any real harm to the company anyway, and she is a pitiful person who has always been used by others, so it's fine to let Seveni take care of her. Like this, Vivian shouldn't blame me, right? Sui gave a bitter laugh and shook his head. Then he let out a sigh and threw these little girl-like thoughts out of his mind, focusing on the important matter that he needed to pay attention to. There were many reasons for the war between the Lampari Kingdom and the Sac Kingdom this time, so the people who paid attention to this war had different analyses. But to Sui, there was only one reason for this war, which was the economy. There was a famous saying on Earth that any war was an extension of the economy. To Sui, the biggest meaning of the war between the Lampari Kingdom and the Sac Kingdom was this. Many people only paid attention to the Sac Kingdom's territorial and monetary compensation in the Armistice Agreement, but not many people cared about the fact that the Sac Kingdom was completely open to the Lampari Kingdom. To Sui, this was the most important thing. Being completely open meant that the Sac Kingdom's domestic market wasn't guarded against the Lampari Kingdom at all. With the magic machine industry in the Lampari Kingdom, Sui could imagine that not long after, the cheap and beautiful products from the Lampari Kingdom would pour into the Sac Kingdom, completely occupying the Sac Kingdom's domestic market. If nothing unexpected happened, the Sac Kingdom's economy would be firmly grasped by the Lampari Kingdom, and they wouldn't be able to resist at all. In the signs, everyone was more used to directly occupying territory. After the Lampari Kingdom's northern army won again and again, the Lampari Kingdom was filled with calls to directly occupy the Sac Kingdom. Even Seveni had thought of this. But with Suyi's persuasion, Seveni gave up on this idea and decided to use the steady method of gradual erosion. Because of the limitations of communication, the people of the signs didn't have much concept of countries. Most of the citizens only knew their lords and didn't have much concept of countries. Now that the Lampari Kingdom had taken the 7 southern cities from the Sac Kingdom, as long as they spread the word, it wouldn't take long for most of the citizens of those 7 cities to become citizens of the Lampari Kingdom. As long as the Lampari Kingdom continued with this strategy, it wouldn't be a problem to completely erode the Sac Kingdom. For the New Flyer, the benefits of this didn't stop here. Su-yi was interested in the Sac Kingdom's domestic market, but that wasn't the most important thing. Compared to that, what he cared more about was that after the Sac Kingdom opened up, it would be easier for the new flyer to expand to the north of the continent through the Sac Kingdom. Actually, the main reason why the Lampari Kingdom suddenly declared war on the Sac Kingdom was because the Sac Kingdom declared war on the Antilla Kingdom. The Antilla Kingdom was the Sac Kingdom's neighbor to the north. In Su-yi's expansion plan, the Antilla Kingdom was a very important kingdom. But he never thought that before this plan could be implemented, the Sac Kingdom would move against the Antilla Kingdom. Su-yi naturally didn't want the Sac Kingdom to mess up his plan, and Seveni also had this idea, so both sides hit it off. With the support of the new flyer, the Lampari Kingdom sent out their troops and directly crushed the Sac Kingdom's plans. Now that the Sac Kingdom had calmed down after suffering this blow, Su-yi's next plan was to continue expanding the magic machine industry to the north of the continent. But this plan needed to be carefully considered because the first problem that needed to be solved was the most important problem of transportation. Right now, other than the Sac Kingdom that had 3 roads that were less than 1,000 kilometers long, there wasn't a single road in the countries to the north that had passed this test. It wasn't a problem to build a basic road network in the Sac Kingdom, but to make the Antilla Kingdom and the countries further north accept it, that wasn't a simple matter. While thinking about these problems, Su-yi sat in his magic sedan and arrived at the best Chanel restaurant in Anvilmar City. The magic sedan had just stopped in front of the Chanel restaurant when a group of people wearing the uniforms of different countries came forward, inviting Su-yi into the restaurant. In the largest and most luxurious private room of the Chanel restaurant, all the ambassadors of the various countries that had diplomatic relations with the Lampuri Kingdom were present, waiting for Su-yi's arrival. All of these important figures in Anvilmar City and their own countries all had unconcealable nervousness and apprehension on their faces. Today's banquet was actually being held by the new flyer, and they had specially invited the ambassadors of the various countries. After receiving this news, not a single one of the ambassadors rejected it, and they all came as soon as possible. This was because the new flyer had stated on the invitation that the new flyer's chairman, Su-yi, would personally attend this banquet and explain the new flyer's plans for the military magic machines to everyone. After the war between the Lampari Kingdom and the Sac Kingdom, everyone understood a fact from this war. At least at this stage, the new flyer had a giant advantage in terms of military magic machines that no one could compare to. As for the military magic machine's suppression of traditional fighting methods, this was an indisputable fact that everyone recognized. So when they heard that the new flyer would announce their plans for the military magic machines, everyone became nervous. If the new flyer was willing to support the Lampari Kingdom and sell the military magic machines to another country, no matter who the new flyer chose, that country would become one of the strongest military powers. So when Su-yi walked into the giant box, he saw that all the ambassadors were looking at him. Their eyes looking at Su-yi were filled with expectation and desire. That kind of expression was like the girls in a nightclub waiting for their customers to pick them. Su-yi gave a soft cough and threw this strange thought out of his mind. He didn't hesitate to walk to the center of the box and look around before raising his hands. The box instantly fell silent as everyone looked at Su-yi, waiting for him to speak. Seeing the reactions of the people around him, Su-yi couldn't help smiling. The people in this private room were all ambassadors sent by various countries to the Lampuri Kingdom, representing the countries behind them. Now that they were showing him this kind of respect, it was enough to show the new flyer's position in the hearts of these countries. When the new flyer was still developing in Banta City, even if Su-yi wanted to see any one of them, he would have been refused the door. Now he only needed to send an invitation, and they were all here. Su-yi's heart was filled with a trace of pride, while also feeling more gratified. After all the hard work of him and the people of the new flyer, the magic machine industry had finally received the importance of all the countries on the continent. Although most of this importance came from the powerful deterrence brought by the military magic machines, that didn't affect this fact. Today, he wanted to use the military magic machines to make these countries pay more attention to the magic machine industry that he and the Shinfei Chamber of Commerce had brought to them. After giving a soft cough, Sui used a small sound-amplifying spell on himself and said in a clear voice, "Everyone, I don't like wasting words, so I'll be direct with everyone. The reason I called everyone here today is to tell everyone that our new flyer has decided to sell military magic machines to all the countries on the continent. There will be no exceptions." As soon as his voice fell, there was an uproar. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.